Marvel crosses over with Star Wars, and the Avengers invade. This video is purely for entertainment, and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting, and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251, Making a Plan. Soon after, the Guardians and Bounty Hunters gathered in a room around a holographic table that showed the villages and regions they inhabited. We have two fronts to worry about when the attack comes, the forest to the south and the ridge to the north, Star-Lord said, pointing to the two areas. Whatever we do, both of these areas need to be protected. Otherwise they will surround us. Three fronts, Gamora added. Don't forget the droids. They might launch an airstrike. Quill. And I can handle this, Rocket said, patting his vest where one of his aviation kits was attached to his back. HK, I've got two spares. If you'd like to get some air superiority. Flattery. Yes please. I'm always looking for new ways to diversify my killing abilities. Death falling from the sky is something I haven't done yet. That's quite disturbing. Rumi muttered as he looked at the assassin robot. What are you talking about? Suji asked. We'll tell you later, Gamora cut in. Right now, we need to make sure our plan is correct, or we'll be outnumbered. But there are only 8 of you? A Felucian who attended the meeting asked. How can 8 bounty hunters fight off so many pirates? Strength isn't always about numbers. It's mostly how you actually use the few you have, said Thanos' adopted daughter Embo spoke in his native tongue, to which Rocket responded, yeah, you said it yourself, Hatman. Rocket boasted. A few pirates are just a piece of cake for us. What does this mean? Serapis asked in a tone of indignation. What do you think this means? Rocket launched a challenging counterattack, but was pulled back by Gamora. You seem to lack confidence in our abilities, Suji said in an accusing tone. It's not like that, Quill said, glaring at Rocket not to interrupt. It's just that we might be facing a large number of enemies. It's not that we can't handle them. It's just that they might take advantage and attack the villagers. Q. Then why didn't they protect themselves? It's not as difficult as you describe. That's it. We will only train the villagers to defend themselves, Star-Lord said with an anxious expression. What now? Rocket said in surprise. But we are just simple farmers. Why should we pay bounty hunters to protect us if we are going to do it ourselves eventually? Hush, Delaney, Cassis chided. Observation. If a creature as small as my ally Rocket can prove a threat to creatures 10 times his size, we can show you how to do the same. He's not wrong, Quill muttered. Q. Master Quill, please allow me to assist you in your training. I have many forms of combat and assassination skills that I would be happy to bestow upon these little meat bags. Let's don't think too far ahead, said Star-Lord. How can you be so confident? Cassis asked. What if we are unprepared for those pirates? Trust me, we'll get you ready, Star-Lord said confidently. Within hours of their plan forming, the assembled bounty hunters began to work in various parts of the land. For a few, their task was to clear the crop fields. Given the developments, it would be better to deal with them now, rather than do them later when the conflict with Hondo and his forces was resolved. Put them all in the barn, Suji instructed the farmer as his farm tractor went to plow the field. As a dozen peasants loaded the collected psyllium into their central barn, another 30 formed a line in front of Gamora. Alright everyone, gather up, Gamora ordered the Felucians in front of her. The farmers looked at each other in confusion, not knowing what to do. Gamora gasped. Split into 5 rows. The farmers ended up not forming lines but forming small teams, causing their coach to rub the bridge of her nose in frustration. I told you, we are not soldiers. We don't even have weapons, Delaney shouted. Gamora stared at the wooden sticks in their hands and walked up to one of the farmers. Can I use them? She asked politely. With the farm implement in her hands, she stepped back and began to move it around to get a feel for it. After a moment, she began to spin it with precision and speed. Finally, she smiled and handed the farm board back. These are very useful. Rocket walked around, throwing discs here and there, staring at the sky. He squinted his eyes and called Rumi over to him while he continued to work. HK-47 is with a couple of Felucians who have slingshots and shows them how to use them properly. Over in the big barn, Star-Lord and Suji are watching more Sealims pile up inside. We'll probably be overwhelmed by their superior numbers, Quill pointed out. Some will surely try to break past us and make a beeline for the barn. There's plenty of room here to defend. Why don't you get your boat out of the way? Or you sit anyway, risk being destroyed? No thanks, you. No, we have our own. Suji did not respond, but pointed to the barn, and another pair of villagers walked in carrying a piece of Silim. Ah. You sure you know what you're doing? Quill asked suddenly, causing Suji to look at him with a raised eyebrow. What does it mean? Nothing, nothing, just, you think I'm only worried about my profits, right? Suji interrupted him. Well, I'm not going to lie, kind of, Star-Lord admitted. I've had to deal with this situation a number of times. I'll have you know that I am not as much of a backstabber as you think. Hey, let's not talk about this. However, Suji kept going. So, in your mind, I'm just like any other pirate. Well, I wouldn't think of it that way, Star-Lord said. Look, I've done some shitty things in my life myself that I'm not proud of. We all have, don't we? Us, my team, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Star-Lord clarified. All of us, and I mean all of us, do a lot of messed up stuff that's not exactly the kind of thing that would make most people sleep well at night. Suji wasn't quite sure how to respond. Look, I know we're all here for some paychecks and all this bullshit, but we have to work together, Star-Lord said, pulling a disc out of his pocket. Suji stared at the small disc. So what is this supposed to be? The aero rig, Quill said. You hit your chest or your back, and boom, it takes you up instantly. Suji held it up and examined it. Can this make me fly? Quail said. We actually noticed that this galaxy didn't have anything we normally come across. This immediately caught Suji's attention. This galaxy, Star-Lord blinked, then opened his eyes and closed his mouth several times. Oh, yeah, you see. Quill. Star-Lord breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He really didn't want to explain this matter now. It's not that he was against it, but the specific topic would take a long time to elaborate. What happened? What music shall we listen to when we get back on board? Asked the rocket. What are you looking for? Anything fun? Yes, yes, just like that water cloud, blue sky, Quill said, quickly leaving Suji and joining Rocket. The Zabrek woman's face scrunched up, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. Star-Lord's words just now aroused Suji's suspicion, and she wanted to find the answer now, no matter what he meant, but for now, she would have to save those issues for another day. Now, she had a job to do, and she would do it to the end. Chapter 252 Defensive Measures. Back with Gamora, she's taking a break from training the first batch of farmers from earlier. Embo is in a nearby forest, wandering the grounds, surveying the natural landscape for any sort of defense. In most cases, these large trees appear sturdy in appearance and can serve as good barriers both in the air and on the ground. Gamora eventually saw Serapis using the bandsaw on his arm to cut through the fungus tree. As it began to fall, the armored man quickly grabbed it, but she saw him begin to struggle to lift it. Without a word, Gamora ran forward and drew her sword. With one simple swing, she cut the tree in half, removing a significant amount of the mechanical weight point. Although Serapis managed to remove the large fungus from his body, he began to jolt erratically. Serapis? Gamora asked with concern. Suddenly, the suit's headpiece pops off, revealing a tiny alien driving the body. Don't look. Second had a suit malfunction. The stuttering little alien. The occupant inside the robot began to fiddle with the controls, hoping to get it back to normal. However, it was too late, as the little alien saw the look the green-skinned warrior was giving him. The real Serapis sighed in defeat. I'm scary, aren't I? Gamora just gave him an encouraging smile. Size isn't everything, Serapis, Gamora said. You'd be surprised at some of the giants my team and I have seen and taken down. Want to know how we did it? He looked up at her, and she patted her head. Intelligence goes a long way. She then patted the mechanical body he was operating, causing him to look at her with an appreciative expression. Re-entering his mech, with his upper body wrapped around him, he placed his right arm over his chest. "Thank you for your help." Soon after, the two separated and continued their mission, to prepare for the battle in the village. When Gamora returns to where Embo is training farmers, she sees one of them throwing his farm tools to the ground in frustration. The bounty hunter is right. Every minute you waste teaching us how to spin these stupid poles is time you can spend beating up those pirates yourself. Delaney complained loudly, throwing his staff down. "How will that benefit you?" Gamora asked defiantly. "Another band of pirates will inevitably show up. Or are you going to abandon part of your crop every harvest season? If you let us do this, there will be no more harvest season. With that attitude, that's probably going to happen," Rocket said, now joining in on the little training session. "You do realize you guys are prime targets for assholes like Hondo and his bunch of idiots, right?" Delaney simply snorted and tossed his staff aside, leaving the other Felucians looking around, unsure of what to do. The daughter of Thanos simply stomped her feet, causing everyone to turn around and look at her. "Alright, everyone get back to your positions. Let's continue," Gamora ordered, resuming her role as trainer, while Embo went about his business. As the sun began to set over the valley, a Weequay pirate watched them from the cliffs above. "Well, what are we doing here? We're ready to fight, aren't we?" he muttered, looking through a pair of binoculars. As she and Quill chatted, she walked through a part of the village and spotted something out of the corner of her eye. Curious, she turned her attention to it and saw that something was wrong. "Here he comes, a scout," she explained, pointing at the cliff. The Weequay pirate quickly scrambled to his feet before being hit by several blaster rounds. He looked around frantically and saw a robot hovering above him. Seeing this as an opportunity to take out the enemy scout, HK-47 activated its arrow ring and took to the air. With its increased mobility, the assassin droid was in a state of ecstasy as it pursued its target. The pirate rushed out, and HK-47 kept firing at the Weequay pirate. However, instead of simply taking him out, HK chose to toy with the pirate by shooting him left and right. Just as the pirate reached his speeder, suddenly, a metal disc flew out of nowhere and hit the Weequay pirate in the chest. The pirate doubled over from the blow. As he tried to walk back, he saw the bounty hunter Embo rushing towards him. The Weequay pirate punched him, but the limb was snatched away before the bounty hunter held down his neck and quickly broke it. The bounty hunter dropped the body on the ground and soon saw his round metal hat grabbed by the assassin droid. Retrieving his weapon/hat from HK, Embo modestly gratefully. As the exchange continued, others joined them moments later. "That was pretty fast," Star-Lord said, crouching down to grab the blaster rifle and tossing it to Rocket, who hummed and moaned as he thought about possible modifications. "Yes, but when this scout didn't report to Hondo, they would be here soon," Suji said bitterly. "Then we better get ready," Gamora announced. HK, cheers and joy. Finally, it's time to kill the meatbag. A Weequay approached the pirate lord, where Hondo and his men were camped. The man was currently eating breakfast while discussing supply details for an upcoming raid he wanted to join. Yes, what is this? Can't you see I'm busy? Our scout has not returned from the village. He should have come long ago. Hondo sighed, which was quickly replaced by a sinister smile. Well, okay. So it looks like the Guardians decided to be the stupid heroes they pretended to be, huh? Or at least we now know we can't take these villages for granted. Hondo said, standing up. Boss, what should we do now? Hondo snorted, quickly zeroing in on one of the few robots currently turned on. It was a miraculous discovery. These droids. They had to be prototypes of some kind of startup that hoped to become one of the Trade Federation and its allies. The Weequay pirate lord did wonder why these specimens had to be given such durable armor and firepower. If they happened to be prototypes, they should have been made of cheaper materials, obviously much better than those used for the Separatist droids. Well, he wasn't complaining, that's for sure. His victory and the loss of the people who built those robots once he attacked the transport that was carrying them. Looks like we're going to have to collect our harvest sooner than expected, Hondo said, walking up to a large cart and throwing a leg over it. But you know what I always say, speak softly and drive a big tank. He then turned his attention back to one of his subordinates. "I'll have the rest of our toys up and running in no time. In the meantime, why don't you and the guys mess around with the village? But be cautious, because of the Guardian, because of the Guardian." Chapter 253. The battle begins. At midnight, the countryside seemed peaceful, while life was barely agitated by the sounds of insects chirping. As this went on, some bounty hunters were on patrol, while others were resting. No doubt about the battle that took place in the morning. The weakway pirate retracted his binoculars and signaled the rest of his companions to move forward and take up position. For now, they had to go through the forest, hoping for a surprise. They obviously couldn't take the main road into the valley because it was too open and there were so many people, so they had to take the long way. "And did you hear that?" one of the pirates shouted. "Did you hear?" There was a strange tinkling sound in the air. Then there was singing. Southern nights. Even if you close your eyes, it's still good. I apologize to anyone who can actually say this. He found a better way. What is that? I do not. The pirates were all stunned and looked down at the feet of one of their companions. After a while, multiple needles from all directions hit quite a few people, and each of the people who were hit was covered with needles and fell to the ground, and many of them soon fell into a coma or paralysis. The remaining pirates were now scrambling when they heard a short beep and glanced down in fear. Southern sky. Have you ever noticed the southern sky? Its precious beauty is before our eyes. It penetrates your soul just like the old story. The pirates were quickly thrown out, shouting in terror, some still on the ground looking up in fear. After a while, they were also thrown into the air by some invisible gravity, and the others fell down. Feels great, it's cold. I hope I can stop the world from fighting. Ladder dada jumping back and forth between branches. Rocket chuckled to himself. They say the same trick never works twice. Well, they haven't seen me yet. Rocket looked down from his hiding place, put away the anti-gravity mine detonator, and retrieved a series of electrical discs. Once out, he jumped down and began to jump on each pirate while leaving a parting gift on their body. Each of them was frantic at his sudden approach and very confused as to what Rocket was doing. Jumping off the last pirate, Rocket pressed the control switch connected to the switchboard, electrocuting the enemy pirate in one fell swoop. Seeing them all convulsing, the remaining pirates were defeated and fell to the ground. Then take good care of them. Earlier, back in the village, people were moving in. The other bounty hunters had been alerted earlier when they began to hear explosions in the air and blaster fire. "Alright, everybody," Suji called out from the center of the village. "Move. Return to your places. Stay in your homes." And behind the fences Embo and HK moved together, taking a moment to pause and glance at the pirates screaming. He saw a small group of pirates being thrown into the air and falling down from another part of the forest, and another group of pirates did the same. This process was repeated several times before Embo turned back to his work. Star-Lord, Suji and Gamora are now standing in front of the fence, which will serve as a barrier for them. "The farmers are already there," Quail said. "Very good. Open the fence," Gamora said to Suji, who simply nodded and pressed a control on his wrist. Instantly, what could be described as green electricity surrounded most of the village. Suji and Rumi flapped around the aero rig, both marveling at how the technology molded around their shapes. Taking to the air, it was a slightly shaky experience for both, as they had not used anything like it. The moment the two aerial bounty hunters stabilized, they discovered many objects flying towards them. "We have company," Rumi shouted, raising her sniper rifle. "Fight, everyone," Suji exclaimed, firing several shots at the oncoming pirate robots. They take the blast well, raising their arms and morphing them into railgun form. The two quickly flew away, replaced by Star-Lord, who flew straight at the droid with a quad blaster in his hand. Star-Lord runs straight at them, weaving around oncoming blaster fire, and then dispatches the droid in mid-air. The droid stumbles, so to speak, giving Peter the opportunity to blow it to pieces and move on to his next target. Some flew down and fired railguns at the village, and their protectors ran around to defend the people. Embo ran forward, lowering his hat to block some of the oncoming fire, and he had to tilt his head slightly to absorb the impact as these blasts proved to be particularly powerful. He leaped over a robot, spinning a small disc fell from his body. It surrounded the confused robot, and when Embo landed, the robot was immediately shocked and overloaded. Jiu's Angren looked up and nodded with satisfaction. He would definitely thank Rocket later. Then Embo heard the sound of an oncoming speeding car and ran forward. A few people passed by, but the guy in the middle of the group had the misfortune of being thrown from his vehicle and commandeered by a guy in a fancy bounty hunter hat. Elsewhere, Gamora was directed to another path, leading a group of pirates on a speeder bike that she had previously stolen from her enemies. After reaching a certain point, she signaled Serapis and the other peasants to take action. After a while, trees were knocked down the road. The oncoming pirates had no time to turn around, causing them all to crash into the falling flora, killing or seriously injuring them. She turned back and smiled at Serapis, who nodded at her, and then turned around. CLICK*GAMORA'*S eyes widened in shock as she watched Serapis being engulfed and swallowed by the fiery explosion. A moment later, from the smoking wreckage of the bounty hunter, several droids flew out of the black mist and chased after Gamora. Gamora roared, turning her speeder around and heading straight for the robot. They shot at her, and Gamora returned fire. She managed to shoot down one, but the rest of the robots clamped onto the speeder's engine. Gamora paid no mind to this and simply leapt forward with her borrowed speed as she reached out her hand and a retractable sword called Godslayer formed, cutting through both robots with one clean strike. They both stumbled through the air before breaking into multiple pieces and falling to the ground. The remaining robots flew around, trying to get around the professional assassins. However, Gamora is already taking action. Gamora uses her enhanced strength, speed, athleticism, and her surroundings to leap high into the air and perform a spinning kick. In the village, the Guardians and their fellow bounty hunters are fighting off the pirates and their robots. For the most part, the battle is relatively favorable to them thanks to Rocket's gadgets and their own fighting skills. Until Hondo decided to get involved in his own special way. Atop the cliff, Hondo sat in his tank, manning its main gun. He began firing at the village, not caring where he aimed, because he knew that wherever he hit, it would cause damage. Unfortunately, one of them was heading in the direction that Embo was riding. The blaster beam hit nearby, the shockwave enough to send Kyuzo flying through the air and landing hard on the ground. Embo! Suji yelled, running towards her fellow bounty hunter. She reached him, checking to see if he was still alive. Embo, can you hear me? The Zabrak female saw him stir, weakly trying to stand up. You're going to be fine. We'll get you inside. More tank shells rained down on the land, causing more chaos, and peasants on their mounts were blown away and seriously injured as they tried to flee to safety. Everybody, retreat to the barn. The group paused momentarily as they saw a blaster shell coming in their direction. Thankfully, however, Rocket was nearby, and in an instant, he threw out a swarm of tiny spheres that formed a giant shield in front of the group, who easily caught the blaster beam. That tank will tear the villagers to pieces, Suji said wearily, lifting Yunbo to his feet and carrying him to the barn. Quill, did you hear that? Rocket said, looking up into the air, where Star-Lord was currently fighting some droids. Got it, Quill grunted, sending one droid flying with his weapon and blasting a hole in its head a second later. Suji helps Yunbo walk towards the barn, while HK provides cover. Bring him in. We'll hold them off as long as we can, Suji said, pulling Yunbo off her shoulders and onto a villager. Suddenly, there was an explosion from above, and Ruma's figure fell in front of them. No! Zabrak cried out in horror upon seeing her friend rushing towards her. Suji, don't get distracted. Damn it, Rocket said, firing his iron cannon at a few pirates that had entered the village's main defensive perimeter. But, would you like to live one more day for your friend, and then grieve later? Chapter 254 Victory, the origin of the mysterious robot. On the edge of the cliff, Hondo was about to fire again when he was nearly hit by fire from above. He looked up and saw Star-Lord flying straight at him, firing his quad blaster. The pirate captain ducked into a tank to avoid the attack. Quill approaches as Hondo jumps out of the tank and fires at him with his own blaster. Star-Lord staggered out of the way and fired at the tank. It hit the barrel of the cannon, landing on the tank. Star-Lord and Hondo engage in close combat, with the pirate discarding his blaster. pistol and replacing it with an electrified staff. He swung the staff several times, and Star-Lord dodged each blow, countering with a stab to the gut and an uppercut to the chin point. Before he could press his advantage, Hondo's little pet leapt out of the tank and landed right in Quill's face. "Get off me," Star-Lord said, throwing the creature down, and with a powerful kick of his leg, he sent the Kawakia monkey lizard flying. After gaining his freedom, the Guardian quickly dodged Hondo's next attack, leaping back and landing on solid ground. "Your situation is hopeless, Quill," Hondo said, hovering over his tank. Before Star-Lord can spring back into action, the Kavak's monkey lizard returns with a vengeance. Star-Lord pried the small monster off his face as he swung it around. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he yelled before throwing it down and quickly shooting it dead. "No," Hondo cried in horror, his face turning into one of fierce anger. "Then why would you hurt such a lovely creature? Cute. That thing is annoying, you know." "Okay, that would be true. I'll find another one, hopefully. There will be better house training." That being said, they started fighting each other again. Point in the village, the Guardians and Bounty Hunters return to the electric fence and fight off the attackers. Gamora punched the robot straight through the chest, and then she felt something whizzing past her from behind. Looking back, she saw a Felucian retrieving his spear from the Weequay's body. "Welcome back, Delaney. How are you?" Gamora said with a smile. "Very good," Delaney said confidently. Back at the cliffside, Star-Lord is using his electro staff to move backwards from Hondo's rather erratic swings until the pirate swings through a wide, horizontal archway. Star-Lord found the right opportunity, and the Weequay pirate lord was thrown over his head, sliding across the cliff and almost falling off the side. He quickly grabbed the edge of the cliff with a gasp. As all this is going on, a few of Hondo's men discover what's going on up there. "Captain," one of them shouted. "Let's go." The remaining pirates quickly evacuated the farmland, either hoping to rescue their boss or to return to their ship. Seeing the pirates flee, Cassius had a huge smile on his face. "We won," he shouted, winning cheers from his fellow farmers. Back on the cliff, Star-Lord watches Hondo dangling over the edge. "Save me," the pirate pleaded. Star-Lord isn't convincing enough to help this man until, "Quill, let me take my men with me." However, Star-Lord aimed his quad blaster at the pirate when he heard something behind him. He looked back and saw the tank's cannon pointed directly at him. Without a second thought, Quill jumped off the cliff, using his boot thrusters to keep himself from crashing to the ground below. He stood up and saw the others running towards him, all looking towards the top of the cliff where Hondo had climbed back up. "In vain," he yelled at the top of his lungs. "No longer profitable." He roared away and returned to his ship. Once on board, the gangway closed as the spacecraft entered orbit. They all watched as the ship flew away, eventually disappearing from sight. After a while, the villagers began to cheer as they realized they had triumphed with the help of the Guardians and the remaining bounty hunters, who smiled with satisfaction at a job well done. The next day, although the mood in the village was high, there was a sense of melancholy as several graves were made for the fallen. There are multiple mounds of villagers as they bravely fight to defend their homes. One wore the helmet of Serapis' mechanical body on a pole, while the other wore the cloak of Rumi Paramita to pay tribute to the warriors who died defending their village and ensure that they are remembered as heroes, rather than simply hired guns to protect their village. Eventually, Cassius and most of the villagers stood at the edge of town, with the 6 surviving mercenaries standing before them. "There are crops to harvest, fields to till, huts to rebuild. Now, let us rest, so we can work in peace." As the villagers paid their way home and rested, Cassius turned to the other hired bounty hunters. "How can I ever thank you for saving our village?" "We didn't save your village, Cassius. Your people did," Quill said with a smile. "For the first time in my memory, my people are no longer afraid of pirates. We will never forget you." "I certainly hope you don't," said Rocket, as he sat on the box of psyllium seeds they had earned for the job. Standing right next to Rocket was Yunbo, who was sitting on a pile of psyllium that he and Suji would split for extra income. He was currently wearing several bandages to help with the injuries he had sustained the night before. "I'm very interested in your team," Suji said, not far from the Guardian. "Do you want to go to a bar somewhere to celebrate?" "Now you're saying what I think," Rocket said encouragingly. "Now you can go get a drink. It's great to work with you guys." Gamora said seriously. Embo said a few words, causing Star-Lord to hum. That doesn't sound like a bad idea, Quill admitted. Maybe you could have rocket fiddle with your hat in there. Make it more awesome. HK, comment. I recommend you do this. The rewards are worth it. HK held up his rifle, demonstrating several features he had never used in combat. The group began to leave the village and walk towards their ship. I admit, it's been a pleasure working with you, Suji said before helping Yunbo into her ship. We'll see you on Tatooine, Quill called out. We'll have a drink then. We'll look forward to it. At an undisclosed location, a small boat flew across the empty space, its destination being a brown-gray planet. There are several spacecraft in orbit, and if you look closely, you can see that there are multiple robots working around the clock to make the spacecraft more powerful. The small vessel passed the larger ship and made its way towards the planet's surface, heading towards a particularly ominous-looking large factory. Small droids and starfighters were flying around the factory. The droid flew right to the top of the factory, above a pillar that was emitting thick smoke. The ship hovered over the factory for a while until a landing pad appeared from the pillar. It landed, and the column descended into the factory. As it descended, it passed by multiple production lines, conveyors, cranes, and areas where robots of multiple sizes were being manufactured with the same overall aesthetic. It eventually came to rest on a floor where multiple ships of similar design were stored. When the hatch opened, a damaged but still functional robot emerged and lifted off into the air. The robot came to a door at the end of a long corridor. The door opened, and the robot entered a circular room. In the center was a strange metal chair with multiple wires and pipes connected to it. Seated on this throne is a tall metallic figure that exudes danger and power. I see you're back from your trip. The creature's voice was a strange mix of synthetic and organic. How was it? The robot didn't respond verbally. Instead, it blinked its blue eyes rapidly and walked towards its master, reaching to the side. The creature grasped the robot's head and peered into the lifeless optics. The robot's head then separated from the rest of its body and was raised slightly above the creature, holding it pointed. Held its head for a moment, gathering the information it brought him. He hummed loudly as he replayed the audio and video of the battles. The robot had been involved in Earth music, he muttered. As far as he knew, the only connection to Earth culture was the Avengers in Republic space. How did it come out? Talking raccoons and humans. He smiled sinisterly. Well, alright. These Guardians are an interesting new factor on the board. The creature threw its head back to the robot, which caught its severed head. Fix yourself and get back to work, Ultron leaned back in his chair and continued to monitor his work, knowing that soon, his time would come. Chapter 255 Busy Spider-Man. Not sure if this counts as your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Peter Parker, aka the Amazing Spider-Man, is currently swinging around the massive city planet of Coruscant. By now it had become a daily occurrence, assisting in wars and searching for missing heroes across Earth. The thought itself still seemed incredible to Peter. In early 2015, he was worried about high school and all that jazz. Then there's the spider bite, and 9 months later he's in space in what seems like another galaxy, fighting an interstellar war with the Avengers. How in God's name did this happen? It's unbelievable. Last he checked, the biggest concerns on Peter's list were school and landing on top of a building. Spider-Man sat down and took off his mask with a serious expression. Peter ran his hands through his hair, staring at the endless city planet, watching multiple spaceships flying around this place. Or, it was they who redefined the function of highways on the planet. Wonder how Aunt May is doing, Peter thought glumly. He could only imagine how worried his guardian was right now. Since he's been here so long, God knows how she reacts to it. Maybe she goes straight to Mr. Stark. His thoughts were interrupted when he saw several large gunships flying towards an area with a sizable clone presence. Spider-Man narrowed his eyes, quickly put on his mask, and leaped forward to chase after them. He managed to stick to one of the gunships, carefully making his way around the open panel and sticking his head out to show the clones inside. Hey, Commander Thorne. The clones inside nearly jumped at the sound of his voice, and some reached for their blasters as the aforementioned commander breathed a sigh of "Oh my god, stop doing that, Spider-Man," Thorne said kindly. Peter just smiled and jumped into the gunboat. "Hey, guys. Spider-Man said cheerfully. Jack, Narlan, Murph, nice to meet you. The clones all took turns greeting him, and Jack patted Spider-Man on the shoulder. Come on another wild ride with us? Jack asked. Come on Jack, where's the fun in sitting in the temple twiddling my thumbs all day? Peter grinned beneath his mask and Jack laughed heartily. Funny thing is, it's only been a few weeks, a few months, but ever since Peter started patrolling Coruscant, he started running into the Coruscant Guard more and more. This caused a lot of speculation at first, but several clones vouched for him, citing the fact that he had saved many people, some of whom were clones, during the Zillow Beast rampage. Although it was difficult to fit in at first, many of the Coruscant Guard began to view Peter in a more friendly light. After learning that he was a member of the Avengers, these heroes also appeared throughout Coruscant on many occasions, and their relationship only became more harmonious. In fact, Peter had left on more than one occasion to hang out with the Coruscant Guards at their duty station point. For the most part, their great point, there was only one person who seemed to have some inexplicable malice, and that was Commander Fox Point. Apparently, to him, the Avengers are outsiders who owe no loyalty to anyone but themselves, and to some extent, he's probably right. But in Peter's mind, the Avengers' loyalty is to the safety of innocent lives. Now, for example, Commander Thorne explained to him that a group of criminals had caused a serious disturbance not far from an area where many everyday businessmen lived. What's going on? Peter asked as the gunboat continued to fly towards its destination. From the reports we've had, it looks like some kind of turf war between local gangs, Thorne explained, a helmet with spray painted red wings tucked under his arm. As Peter looked forward, the black outline around his white lenses shrank. He then pulled out some small square devices from the utility belt built into his suit. Come on, Thorne. He held up the device. Web grenades, courtesy of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Thorne blinked in surprise, taking the grenades from Peter's hand and examining them. Just push the center there and throw them out, Spider-Man explained, pointing to the small spider logo in the middle. Thorne modestly blinked, looking up to see the young superhero backing away from the edge. Race you, Spider-Man said happily, backflipping out of the gunship and swinging his webs at a very fast speed. Thorne gaped, then scrunched his face and put on his helmet. Come on, boys, we have to hurry or he'll take all the credit again, Thorne encouraged, the clones shouting in agreement. Far ahead of the gunship was Spider-Man, swinging towards the sound of sirens and blasters, picking up speed a moment later. There, he saw multiple people engaged in a skirmish, with dozens of people firing at each other. Peter also spots a few men in white armor who try to get people to safety, while also fighting back against these criminals. He spread his arms and two webs shot out from his elbows and connected to his lower body. He glided forward at an angle, gaining speed as he got closer and closer to the skirmish point. As he approached, within his mask was the display system of his suit, which quickly tagged multiple people in the area. The clones are friendly, civilians are a priority, and criminals shoot everyone else for obvious reasons. Coming into range, Spider-Man immediately fired two webs and instantly caught both thugs. They were hit by his webbing, trapping them on the ground or against a nearby wall. Many people began to look up, and several clones immediately recognized who it was and began to cheer loudly. As the Avengers arrived, they began to move with renewed vigor, assisting civilians to leave, with some of them coming in to fight off the criminals terrorizing the streets. Less than a minute later, the cavalry arrived, with Commander Thorne leading the charge. Thanks to the combined efforts of the clone guards and Spider-Man, all of the rival gang members were rounded up and detained, and all of them were sent to a nearby criminal detention center. Once every civilian was treated, Thorne and Peter began talking to each other. Thank you again for your help, Spider-Man, Thorne said seriously, and the two shook hands. Hey, you're welcome, Thorne. Spider-Man waved his hand. How can I help you? Peter briefly glanced behind him, watching as the clones rounded up the gangsters and shoved them onto the ship that would take them to prison. There must be a lot of them these days, Peter muttered in concern. Nothing surprising, Thorne said, crossing his arms. With the war going on and the loss of Zero the Hutt, crime is everywhere. Hurts low? Peter said in confusion. Aren't you here for this? Thorne asked in surprise. I don't know, Peter said vaguely. Well, to put it bluntly, Zero the Hutt is basically the main crime lord here and was arrested a while ago after he plotted against the Republic. He was taken away. Power. Vacuum. Peter grimaced and Thorn nodded. It sounded a bit like what happened on Earth in Manhattan when Matt took down the crime lord known as Wilson Fisk. He remembered reading about it online, and it would be awesome to see the guy who took down Fisk in costume. We've got everything taken care of here, Spider-Man, Thorn said, causing the young vigilante to look up at the commander. You head back and patrol or whatever you do. Probably patrolling, Peter admitted with a shrug, and Thorn shook his head in amusement. Go on, then, Peter. Goodbye, Thorn, Spider-Man said, giving the commander a two-finger salute. Say hello to T for me, okay? Thorn simply nodded and waved goodbye to the Queen's native hero who watched him turn and leave. I wish I could do that, Thorn muttered to himself, turning back to the situation at hand and beginning to bark orders to any nearby clones that looked free to help. Chapter 256 Falcon 039's Romance. Spider-Man began to swing towards the GD Temple, the building in the distance easily identifiable. As he passed through buildings and cars, something popped up on his heads-up display. There's an Avenger nearby. Peter blinked in surprise and looked around quickly until he spotted the recognized Avenger. Sam comes out of a building looking more like flustered. He was adjusting his wingsuit and checking himself out when, "Hey, Sam." Wilson jerked and looked up, and Sam's eyes widened as he saw Spider-Man swinging at him. "Peter," Falcon said in a nervous voice. The young hero landed in front of him and held out his arms. "What are you doing here, Sam?" Falcon twisted slightly. Well, you see, before the winged Avenger could reply, someone jumped on him from behind and wrapped their arms around his shoulders. "Sam," the woman on his shoulder whined. "Why didn't you say goodbye before you left? Aren't we going out for breakfast?" Sam frozen, his face turning, cringe as he saw Spider-Man's white mask irises widen. The woman looked human, but she was clearly not, as she had pink skin and purple hair. "I'm sorry, Danny," Sam said carefully, "but I have to go take care of the Avengers now." The woman named Danny looked up and saw Spider-Man standing in front of them. The hero waved awkwardly. "Oh my god." Danny moved away from Sam and walked forward to shake Peter's hand. "It's nice to meet another Avenger like you. You must be Spider-Man." "Oh, yeah," Peter said shyly, rubbing the back of his head. "I've heard a lot about you," Danny said excitedly. "You and your team have been all over the HoloNet, and I've seen you around the city, helping people all the time. Can you see me in all this chaos?" Peter asked, pointing to the many spacecraft flying in all directions. "You'd be easy to spot," Danny said, returning to Falcon and grabbing his arm. How did you two know each other?" Peter asked awkwardly. "Oh, that's so romantic," Danny announced gleefully, swooping down on the former pilot. "There I was, standing on the balcony at a horrible business party, and in the blink of an eye the chaos and commotion was over. Suddenly, I fell, and then I was swept up into the air." Danny then jumped up, and Sam instinctively stretched out his arms to catch her. He stumbled slightly, but he still managed to hold her in his arms. The pink-skinned humanoid tilted his head back and raised one leg, resting the back of his hand on his forehead. "My dashing hero grabbed me with his muscled arms like an angel from heaven." Danny sat up and gave Sam a quick, enthusiastic peck on the cheek, and the Avenger couldn't deny the small smile. "That's really great," Peter said with a thumbs up approvingly, and Sam stared at him flatly. "Yes." Danny jumped down, screamed and hugged Falcon. "I never believed that I would be saved by a hero." She then started kissing the Avenger's face and Sam smiled slightly. "Okay, Danny," Falcon said, taking her hand in his. "I'll let you know next time I'm free." Danny then gave the Avenger a sultry look and leaned in to kiss him passionately before pulling away a few seconds later. From the corner of her eye, she saw Spider-Man had turned away, looking very interested in the sky above him. "We should do this again soon, Wilson." "Soon really?" She smiled shyly. "I'll be free next week." With a wink and one last kiss, she wandered back to the building where she and Sam had stayed the night before, her Falcon eyes fixed on Dana's voluptuous back. "Lord, have mercy on you," Sam muttered to himself turning to Spider-Man, who was still looking up as he whistled innocently. "Well, Kit, you can watch now." Peter coughed awkwardly. "So, how long has it been?" "Several times now," Sam said. She's really passionate." "I can see that," Peter said cheekily, causing Sam to look at him blankly. "By the way, who is she?" "She said her species is called Zeltras," Sam said, and the two began to walk. "Apparently very passionate, and," he coughed, "a little promiscuous." Peter snorted. "Yeah, even though I've never done anything like that, I can tell." Sam hummed and nudged the New York superhero gently. "She told me her species releases pheromones to people they find attractive," Sam said. "Oh," Peter said curiously. "So she must like you very much." Wilson couldn't help but smirk, a look of affection in his eyes. "Yes, she is special, I can tell you that much." "I can't wait for everyone else to hear this," Spider-Man announced happily. "Don't talk nonsense." "Oh, what? You're not going to kill someone?" he joked. "Come on, I bet Captain Rogers would like this. Maybe you can also encourage him to find someone special." Sam chuckled to himself at this, knowing it was easier said than done. But then he'd seen how Cap interacted with a certain GD Knight. Whenever the two of them were in the GD temple together, they actually just trained together most of the time. But from what Natasha told him, there were a few times she saw the two just chatting and spending time together, so maybe. Shaking his head, he activated his wingsuit and Peter swung through the air. "Where were you this time?" Sam asked, and the two of them talked as they returned to the GD temple. "Oh, you know, the mundane stuff," Peter shrugged. "Fighting crime, helping the clone guard, stopping turf wars, that sort of thing. It's kind of sad that even in space this kind of shit is pretty common." "I know, right? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 257 Return to Naboo. Soon, both Parker and Wilson were back at the GD temple, where they both greeted several familiar faces from the GD Order. They entered the temple together when they heard chattering not far ahead. "About this, Padme," said the familiar voice of Anakin Skywalker. "If they weren't sure, they wouldn't have contacted me about it." The two heard the concerned tone of Naboo Senator Padme Amidala. "This is serious, Anakin. I have to go take a look." "I have no intention of stopping you." Anakin's voice was hopeful. "This is your home." Sam and Peter finally reached the door of the chatterbox and saw Anakin and Padme standing in a room with a holographic projection of Naboo behind him, and R2-D2 and C-3PO standing in the corner of the room. "Hey, guys," Peter said loudly, causing both men to look up at the two Avengers. "Peter, Sam." Padme greeted warmly. "How are you two?" "Everything is alright, Padme," Sam said, squeezing Anakin's wrist tightly, and the GD Knights took turns doing the same. "What's going on?" "We hear some serious conversation coming from here." "Well, it's a serious matter you walked in on," Anakin said, crossing his arms. "Padme just heard from Naboo that Separatist droids were spotted on the planet." Sam nodded, vividly recalling that their first battle with droids since arriving in this galaxy had taken place on Naboo. "Is everything okay there?" Peter asked with concern. "Not sure yet," Padme said worriedly. "I thought they wouldn't be on Naboo after the last battle," Anakin said, giving Sam a knowing look. "It seems our presence there didn't stop them from coming back," Falcon said, frowning. "So, what are you going to do?" Peter asked Padme. "I need to get back to Naboo right away," Padme said. "But I can't deny that if there are Separatists there, I'd rather drag the Republic fleet to help until they are sure. We have to sit here and wait," Anakin added with a mutter. Sam and Peter looked at each other. "So, do you need help?" Peter asked. "What?" Padme said, looking up at the young hero. "We can go to Naboo with you," Peter said lightly. "If it won't be too much trouble," said Sam. Padme stared at the two Avengers in mild surprise before giving them both a bright, appreciative smile. "Not at all," Padme said, thanking them both. "Hey, wait, but Anakin, in case you forgot, we are not part of the Republic," Sam quickly interrupted. Technically, I'm a freelancer. Realization dawned on Anakin's face, and after a moment he grinned. You're a lifesaver. I'll tell the others and see who can come along, Peter said, rushing out of the room. No you can. Forget it, Sam said. What? Anakin asked. He forgot our communication, Falcon said, tapping his ear. Yes. Skywalker nodded, then turned to the Falcon. Are you going to Naboo, Sam? Falcon shrugged. Not sure yet. We'll decide when the others arrive. Ultimately, a small group consisting of Captain America, Black Widow, Spider-Man, and War Machine were chosen to travel to Naboo with Padme. Sam was asked to stay as the temporary leader of the Avengers left behind, so they could help in case anything happened. The Avengers had long agreed to have at least one mobile team in the galaxy, and another on Coruscant. They had the numbers to do so, and they had a track record of finding lost Avengers by accident point, so they will continue this trend point. After traveling through hyperspace for some time, they arrived at Naboo point. From what the group had seen so far, it was a pretty good day, but the image was marred by the trouble brewing on the planet Naboo. Padme took the helm of the ship, with 4 Avengers chosen to accompany her sitting behind her. After arriving at Theed, the capital of Naboo, the ship docked in the palace's main hangar. The moment it landed, the gangway did not open fast enough for the ship's passengers to leave. As they do so, the group encounters Queen Niadni, the current ruler of Naboo. We're on our way, my lady, Padme said, practically running down the ramp of her personal ship. Did you find any more droids? Only 3. But they are certainly not tourists, Queen Niadni said. I need you to convince the Senate or the Jedi Council, or whoever is in charge of this terrible war, that we are threatened. I'm sorry to inform you, my queen, but the Jedi will not be arriving anytime soon. Padme said apologetically. Before any of them can come here, they will need proof of active participation. But thankfully, some of the Avengers have offered their help. We thank you for this thought. The Queen of Naboo bowed her head. Your actions a few months ago are still remembered by the people of this planet. We lines do what we can. Steve agreed. A few battle droids aren't enough, Rhodes said dryly, and Natasha elbowed the armored colonel. We won't let you down, Peter said with a comforting smile. Suddenly, the wrist communicator of Captain Typho of the Naboo Royal Security Guard rang. Captain Typho, the battle droid is ready for analysis. This way. Typho motioned for them to follow him. They eventually came to a room with multiple shelves of droid parts, several computer screens, and 2 tables filled with discarded Separatist droids. 2 are basic B1 battle droids, the other is a highly advanced tactical droid. Tactical droids? War Machine said bluntly. There must be more out there. We thought so too, Queen Niadni announced. But as the unfortunate news from Senator Amidala suggests, until we find more evidence, there will be no help. That's what we're here for, Black Widow said, walking around the table, while the others stood next to the robots. Chapter 258 Virus, Laboratory. Tap? Steve began. Yes, Comrade Steve. The Avengers' personal AI, Tap, spoke through War Machine's suit. How can I help? Look what you can find on this robot, Steve said. As you wish, Comrade Steve, the AI said, before completing its assigned task. Did you retrieve any information before we arrived? Natasha asked. Unfortunately, the Naboo Security Department that discovered them prefers to shoot first and then retrieve the data when encountering the enemy. The Queen of Naboo said helplessly. I have a bad feeling about this. With your permission, Senator Padme, I would like to return to the ship 3P0 requested. Permission denied, Padme said. Rejected. The protocol robot frowned. 3PO, if Tap can't find anything, you might be able to get some information from him. Unfortunately, this has proven to be true. Tap's muffled voice rang out from the robot, relocating himself into War Machine's suit. Its wires are crossed and damaged. There is no doubt whoever shot this robot was killed. All I can do is simply turn it back onto its basic functionality. That's good. Black Widow shrugged. As the command was given, the robot sat up, its optical system not working. Can't see. Where am I? The tactical droid said, looking around. You are in good hands aboard the Separatist ship. Count Dooku himself intends to reward you for your bravery. 3P0 said in a calm voice. Brave? The robot asked, confused. As a reward for a mission well done on Naboo, the protocol droid said. Try to activate what's left of your memory. We all want to hear your heroic tale. The tactical droid's voice modulator trembled a little as it spoke. Virus. This was certainly not what they expected to hear. Yes, it's a virus. 3P0 encouraged. You remember. Please continue. A small amount has leaked. Must be contained. Naboo cannot know. The lab must remain secret. Naboo's secret laboratory? Where? You must, it's a secret. The tactical droid stopped talking, as if it had finally realized something. This is not a separatist ship. Unless you want to be a piece of scrap metal, you will tell us where that lab is, War Machine said, pointing his shoulder cannon at the robot's head. The lab is secret, the tactical droid denied. Tap. Natasha yelled, comrades, up there. The robot reached for its head with its shaking and cracked joints, grasping at it, trying to remove it, when a surge of energy passed from its body to the back of its skull. It stopped and fell to the ground. Tap. Steve called out. I'm sorry, guys, Tap said. I tried to sift through what I could and piece it together. The people in the room slumped in slight frustration as Natasha narrowed her eyes at the robot. What's going on? Where did the mud come from? She asked. What? Typho perked up. This thing is covered in mud, Natasha pointed out. Where did you drop it? On the grasslands outside the capital, Typho elaborated. Grassland? Steve leaned over the table. Is that how they get covered in mud? That's a real question, Typho said, but before he could continue, he paused. He stepped back in surprise and saw a blue bug fly past him. Peter quickly caught a bug. Well, hello there, little one. Where are you from? The Queen of Naboo stepped forward. A blue weevil. Weevil? Are there Pokémon here? Peter asked in confusion. The natives of Naboo looked at this Spider-Man in confusion, and Steve quickly said, ignore him. What's so special about this bug? War Machine asked. The Queen of Naboo spoke aloud, thoughtfully. Captain Typho said they took these robots on the grasslands. But, the blue weevils here suggest they may have come from somewhere else. The others were now drawn in, and Niadni rubbed her chin in thought. Where? Natasha asked. If I remember correctly, I believe those special insects thrive in the soil beneath the peril tree. Niadni said after thinking for a moment. Like the dirt on this robot. Soon, Padme realized. Eastern Swamp. I think we just found the location of that lab, said War Machine. Let's contact the GD. Padme called out. The Avengers and the natives of Naboo sent a signal to Coruscant, and Yoda and Mace Windu answered the call. Senator Amidala. Master Yoda greeted. Any news for us? Yes, Master Yoda, Padme said. We recently discovered droids on Naboo, and one of them spoke of a secret laboratory on the planet. They are planning an attack on Naboo, Typho said firmly. That's the only explanation. Obviously, they didn't learn their lesson the first time, Steve said, frowning. Yoda closed his eyes. The situation is delicate. I feel the presence of the dark side growing stronger, Master Yoda. Padme was worried now. Send a few GD knights, and we will, Yoda said. Master Luminara, she will come. May I recommend General Kenobi and General Skywalker? Padme then gave her reasons. Right now the relationship with the Gungans is a little tense, but they trust General Kenobi as one of their own, and they both have experience dealing with the tense situation on Naboo. Send them, we will, the Master said, before ending the transmission. Chapter 259 Finding the Laboratory. I want to get as much information as possible before the GD arrive. See if you and 3PO can download the memories of any other battle droids. I'm going to go find that lab. Are you sure it's wise to go alone? Asked Typho, the captain of the Royal Security Guard. We'll go with her, Steve said. Natasha, Peter, you go too. Rhodes, stay and see what else you can find. Keep an eye out too. If an attack were to occur, we'd like our walking arsenal to give the Separatists a warm welcome. Tap, go to Peter. War Machine ordered. You can be more useful to them. I'm sorry, comrade, but why? Tap began. What? Rhodes was as confused as the rest of the Avengers. What do you mean? Young comrade Peter already has an AI in his suit, Tap said, leaving Peter dumbfounded. Yes, I'm surprised Mr. Stark didn't tell you about this, Tap said. Black Widow quickly chimed in. We'll talk about that later. We have work to do right now. Agreed. Padme nodded and said, come on, let's get started. Before we go, would you mind waking up this AI in my suit? Of course, Comrade Parker. I'll tap it. Seems you need a specific method to activate this AI, Tap said. So, unless Mr. Stark gives you any means. Peter just groaned, and Steve patted the kid sympathetically. You'll figure it out, Queen's hero. The Avengers fly to the eastern swamp, now equipped with hazmat suits, to protect them from whatever virus the droid mentioned. As they flew over the plains of Naboo, Padme spotted a rock structure ahead, with several animals lying motionless on the ground nearby. She landed the boat nearby and everyone was getting off. After leaving the boat, the group looked at the seriously ill shack lying on the riverbank. It seemed that they were knocking on death's door at any time. This is really bad, Peter said, crouching next to one of the pitiful creatures. What happened to them? Steve asked anxiously, watching blood shoot out of Shaq's eyes. It has to be that virus, Padme said in a grim tone. We must be getting close. As Peter examined one of the creatures, he felt a sharp pain in the back of his head. Guys. He turned around in time to see a Gungan female attack Padme from behind. After a few moments, she was quickly disarmed by Steve, and Natasha pulled out her DC-17 blaster pistol and pointed it at the Gungan's face. Who are you? The attacker asked. We should ask you the same question, Natasha said, moving the pistol closer. You attacked us. The Gungan scolded. Why are you here? Don't move, Steve ordered sternly. We are not here to hurt you. Are you the ones who released the virus? Be careful, Steve replied. There's a virus spreading. The Gungan woman quickly told the group an important detail. The virus isn't in the air. It's in the water, the Gungan shepherdess assured. Upon hearing the news, the group took off their helmets. Who are you? Padme asked. Peebo, the Gungan woman said. Do you know what happened? We think the virus that made your animals sick came from the parrot tree. PP nodded in understanding, now pointing ahead. Follow this river, I'll take you there. However, Padme stopped her and placed a hand on her shoulder. No, PP, you stay here. I promise you'll be home soon. I'll send some soldiers to pick you up and take you back to Sid. Explain to them what's happening with the river and their lines, isolate it from the rest of the populace until we can figure it out. Peppy nodded in understanding and went over to check on her sick shack while the group returned to the boat and headed upstream. They eventually reached the swamps to the east, having set out from the outskirts because no stable ground could be found on which to land. Keep your eyes open. Look for anything unusual, Padme said as she walked across the muddy ground. Unbeknownst to the group, a scope popped up from the ground and spotted them all. For the briefest of moments, it returned to where it came from. Peter stopped and looked behind them, but saw nothing. Peter? Steve called him. Are you okay? Nothing, Peter said absent-mindedly. I thought I saw something. They walked on, looking around the swamp with increasing caution. Stopping in a more open area, they took a moment to get their bearings. Where to now, Padme? Natasha asked, and the senator looked around. I'm not sure, Padme admitted. The eastern swamp is one of the largest swamps on Naboo, and persists for a long time. A complete search of the place may take a while. Steve chose to look around, trying to find anything unusual, when a beam of light briefly entered his eyes. He blinked and turned to the ground, squinting at something glittering beneath the mud. Steve walked up to it, narrowed his eyes, and then planted his foot on the ground, being greeted by the sound of boot meeting metal. With a sweep of his legs, the dirt was moved aside, revealing. Found something, Steve said loudly, and the others gathered around him a moment later. Looks like some kind of entry hatch. Padme smiled happily, and continued her comms. Captain Typho, I think we are standing on top of the lab. I need a geoscan for the coordinates of SP-127. Peter's sixth sense started to go crazy as Padme ordered. Guys, we can't open this. We have to freeze it. Leave it there. The group turned around to see various separatist droids pointing their weapons directly at them. They are not alone. There were several people standing among the robots, and Natasha and Steve recognized one of them. "Cadreen say," Steve said loudly. "Ah, you know me, Captain Rogers?" Count Dooku's Zabrak attendant said in a mocking tone, igniting her crimson saber. "I'm sorry," Steve said. "Ila Sekira mentioned you. The child kidnapper." Say's expression turned angry. "Aren't you a GD? I don't like it any more than you do," Steve admitted. "But at least they do it for nobler reasons than you Sith." "How are we Sith?" said a particularly large man among the 4 waiters standing in front of them. He had grey skin, light mint eyes, and was dressed mainly in black with a metal headdress on his head. "Selfish, mediocre, and evil," Spider-Man said. "We don't need to fight," said another waiter, his eyes bandaged. "If we did," he ignited his red lightsaber and pointed it at the Naboo senator. "Can you guarantee her safety?" he threatened. "She can take care of herself, mind you," Padme said, pulling out her silver blaster. "From these robots," said the bandaged waiter, pointing to B1 and B2. "Yes, maybe. But from us and him, I believe it's fake." The back of Peter's head made a warning noise before he and Captain Rogers were hit from behind by a force that sent them flying and crashing to the ground. Natasha kicks out with her heels, but her legs are caught, and she is thrown aside. Padme tried to fire at her attacker, but her blaster was tapped away, and a moment later she felt an arm wrapped around her body and a blade pressed to her neck. "Try not to move too much," the man holding her hostage growled from behind his mask, which was spray painted white with a slight skull design. When he stood up, Steve glared at him when he saw who it was. Crossbones. "Hey, Cap. The former Hydra agent, now a mercenary for the galaxy. Nice to see you again. Hope you don't mind if I take a job here." Steve, Peter, and Natasha are now surrounded by battle droids and dark servants, and Padme is in the clutches of Rumlow. "Put down your weapons," Rumlow roared, pressing the knife on his hydraulic glove against Padme's neck, and a little blood dripped down. They know they have no choice. Moments later, the 3 Avengers and the Senator were unconscious. Chapter 260 Mad Doctor. Soon after, they were all taken to the lab below. Padme's hands were cuffed behind her back, while the Avengers were tied up with electrified ropes. They also slowly approached as Padme faced a tall humanoid alien with a white lab coat, blue skin, double eyelids, huge purple markings under his eyes, and a slender face. Behind the droids and humanoids were the Zabrak waiter Cadreen Say and the mercenary Rumlow. Padme glared at the tall humanoid as he walked towards them, the man pulling out a pair of small glasses and holding them up to his eyes. "Who are you? Why are you holding us?" Padme's question was ignored by the man. Peter groaned and slowly sat up, only to be suddenly grabbed by the face and lifted up to the alien, forcing him fully awake. The young teen's eyes widened as he watched the humanoid studying him so intently. "A wonderful specimen." The young teen's eyes widened as he watched the humanoid studying him so intently. Humanoid said in a strange way, something like a German accent. "What is a life form like you doing in a swamp like this?" "I was about to ask you the same thing." Padme shot at the man. "Will you let go of my face?" Peter asked through his squashed cheeks and lips. The humanoid took a step back and put away his glasses. "Thanks to the support of my sympathetic friends in the Separatist Alliance, I'm creating life," he boasted in grand fashion. Rumlow snorted in amusement, and Cadreen just rolled his eyes. Then everyone heard the groaning of Captain America, who had woken up and was slowly getting down to his knees. "Back to Earth? Or did I wake up in Germany?" Steve asked in a dazed tone. "No, you're not back on Earth yet, Rogers," Rumlow said, snapping Steve's attention to where he was. He looked up at the scientist, who was staring at Cap with obvious curiosity. "Who are you?" Rogers asked. The tall alien grinned and grabbed the collar of his lab coat, pulling it straight. "Drive. Wendy, one of the greatest scientists in this galaxy," the now confirmed Madman Doctor said in an exaggerated manner. "Excellent. Someone who thinks highly of himself," said Natasha dryly, now also awake. "When someone like me has the ability to create life, I believe confidence is a natural state of mind," Wendy boasted. "Then, how did you create life?" asked Black Widow. "I'm glad you hit the nail on the head," Wendy said excitedly. The mad scientist walked over to a nearby wall, which was stacked with multiple shelves of vials containing a blue liquid. He pulled out one of the containers and displayed it proudly. "Allow me to present the return of the infamous blue shadow virus." "Blue shadow virus?" Padme repeated in disbelief. "This deadly disease should have been eradicated. Yes, it disappeared from the galaxy generations ago, but I gave it life again," Wendy shouted triumphantly. "How can creating a virus that kills people be compared to creating life?" Peter now shouted angrily. Wendy just laughed out loud. Yes, 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 yes. The Avengers and the Senator stared at the crazy and eccentric scientist in silence. "Oh, you finally shut up." Peter breathed a sigh of relief. Even though Wendy didn't show it, he was offended. Then he moved on. "Unfortunately, the blue shadow virus in its natural form only thrives in water. Until I improve this weakness." Wendy walked over to a small pedestal with several electric rods around it. Wendy placed the vial on the pedestal, walked over to the computer terminal, and flipped a switch. The current began to rush through the vial and the liquid seemed to transform. After the shock ended, the Senator and the Avengers watched as the vial of blue liquid turned into a swirling cloud of microscopic matter. It didn't take them long to realize what had just happened. Yeah. Your eyes don't deceive you. I have perfected an airborne strain of blue shadow virus," Wendy said proudly, holding up the vial of the now gaseous virus. Entering from the laboratory entrance was a lab servant robot holding a circular device in its hand. "This is the last bomb, Doc," it said, approaching the scientist. "I'm well aware this is the last time. Did you think I'd lose count?" Wendy stormed out at the servant robot, snatching the disabled bomb in the process. He then picked up the vial in the air and inserted it into the bomb. The gaseous virus combined with these bombs will release the blue shadow virus back into the galaxy, more powerful than ever before. "So, then the universe is completely unoriginal?" Peter couldn't help but say. "We are in another galaxy, and there is an evil German scientist who wants to do evil and thinks he is misunderstood. I can't tell if this is boredom or laziness. It takes a true genius to accomplish what I do," Wendy yelled, pointing a finger at Spider-Man. "Ah, you crazy?" Padme shouted. "It is a deadly disease. No life form can survive it. That is why it is eradicated. I believe this is what's going on with him." "Padme," Natasha said, glaring at the crazy doctor. "You mean murdered?" Wendy exclaimed like a madman, before handing the armed bomb to the lep robot. "Take this." As it hurried away, the scientist approached the captive. Meanwhile, as we speak, thousands of so-called advanced life forms are spreading this virus throughout the galaxy. Perhaps they are the ones who should be eradicated. "Don't talk nonsense, Wendy," Rumlow's hoarse voice interrupted the doctor's roar. "Have you forgotten that my master Taku wishes to ensure that I bring him any Avengers we capture?" Cadrian added, and Wendy bowed quickly. Yes, of course," Wendy said. "Everything to my great benefactor." Chapter 261 Blue Shadow Virus. Rumlow and Steve just stared at each other, and Natasha did the same to Cadrian. But Peter's eyes were fixed on the wall of vials of the virus. In his mind, it was considering what they could possibly do to stop this madman's multiple plans to bring the virus into the galaxy. When he woke up, he tried to find his Avengers ID card and couldn't feel it on him. His best bet was that Brock Rumlow and the waiters must have taken it with Cap and Black Widow. If they were in a secret lab, the communication might be difficult to send out. His time with the Avengers taught him that he needed to take his time and wait for the right opportunity instead of rushing into it. So now, he allowed the robots to take him and the others away. They'll find a chance to strike back at this lunatic and his hired Hydra bastards. Back with Rhodes, who was reviewing his findings on the Separatist situation on Naboo with Tap and Typho, he soon received notification of the Republic fleet's arrival. Walking to the hangar, he saw several gunships arrive and land, with clones from the 212th, 41st, and 501st Legion appearing along with 5 familiar Jedi faces. "Guys," Rhodes waved to them. He and Typho came with PP, a Gungan woman from the grassland sent by Padme, to greet their old friends. They came together, and Luminara unduly interposed and bowed in greeting. "Hey, Luminara, Barriss." War Machine looked them both over. "Nice to see you two again." "Nice to meet you, Colonel." Luminara greeted Barriss kindly, giving the armored Avenger a kind smile. "I think we are past the need for titles, Luminara, War Machine said with a slight smile. Typho had been talking to Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka, General Kenobi, Anakin, we are so happy. Where is Senator Amidala? Anakin interrupted the captain with a stern look. She went to find the lab the tactical droid mentioned. Rhodes replied, you let her go? Anakin asked excitedly. Do you really think we can stop her? War Machine shot back, raising an eyebrow. Once Senator Padme sets her mind to it, it will be difficult to stop her. C-3PO interrupted, and Anakin lowered his head in frustration. Yes, well said. I know what you mean. Anakin said. He knew how his wife acted sometimes. Typho then cleared his throat loudly, gaining everyone's attention as he looked behind him at the Gungan female standing next to them. This is Pee Poo. She was the last person to see them. Padme got her to safety. They are looking for sick people, Peppy said quickly. I saw them near the swamp. They? Obi-Wan said. She meant Peter, Natasha, and Steve, Rhodes elaborated. They went with her to investigate. Hearing that 3 Avengers were with his wife eased Anakin's considerable worries. After a moment, R2-D2 beeped and Anakin nodded to the astromech. Yeah, you're right, man. What do we do now? We need to be careful, War Machine advised in a blunt tone. Typho and I have recently gotten some new things that have us worried. The others haven't called us back yet, but we think it may be related to what we found. Anakin and Obi-Wan exchanged glances with Luminara before turning back to their Padawan. Ahsoka, Barriss, you two go with the Gungans. See if you can find them. Anakin ordered. Understood, Master, Ahsoka said, and Barriss nodded, and the two of them left, with PP following closely behind. So what did you just say about the other people who haven't called you back? Luminara asked. War Machine tilted his head and returned to the room where the abandoned robots were imprisoned. Come on, let us show you. Soon after, the 3 Jedi Knights stood around a hollow table with Rhodes and Typho, each gazing into the head of a B-1 battle droid. We performed a robotic lobotomy on the battle droid, and Tap managed to piece together the memory point. After a moment, the holographic face of a tall, slender humanoid appeared, with black markings under his eyes. Who's that? Kenobi asked. Drive. Nuvo Vendi, senior physician to the Perma family. He disappeared 10 years ago, Typho said before the holographic message played. Good news, my soulless automated friend. We now have enough blue shadow virus to start filling the bombs. He said. Bomb, 3PO said worriedly, and R3D2 agreed. We only need to send 1 bomb to each key star system. Work fast. I want them ready to deliver. No further playback, because the holographic image was not clear. We are dealing with a run-of-the-mill German scientist, War Machine said with his arms crossed and a grim expression. Blue shadow virus, Luminara said in confusion. How is this possible? If these bombs are delivered, we will have a galaxy-wide plague. Obi-Wan was stressed. War will be the least of our worries, Luminara said dully. There's some good news, Typho said, showing off a large multi-story facility. Senator Amidala found the lab. Before she disappeared, she sent us the coordinates. We've managed to get a geoscan of the area. This is tremendously good news, Kenobi commented. It looks like there are 3 entry points. Captain Typho then highlighted the 3 aforementioned areas on the holographic map, and then highlighted another location. This appears to be the main laboratory. Where is the virus bomb? Luminara asked. This area seems to have higher than average radiation levels. Typho highlighted another area on the geoscan, closer to the center of the lab. This is likely where they are assembling. If Padme alerts them to our presence in any way, Obi-Wan began. If Padme was there and we shot her, she would probably be killed, War Machine pointed out. Where are the others? Anakin asked. You said Steve, Natasha, and Peter were with her. They've probably been caught, Luminara speculated. How did they get caught? Anakin asked. Rhodes warned the GD. This fellow named Wendy may well have some hired forces to make this happen. We'd be putting all our friends in danger. This is a risk we must take. Dr. Wendy and those viruses bombs must not leave the laboratory, Obi-Wan said firmly. What if they or we accidentally detonate one during our attack? Anakin countered. Soon, a hint of fear entered Kenobi's voice. It's better to have one planet infected than the entire galaxy. That's not going to happen. War Machine said sharply. We are going to get them all out, no matter what point. It was a rather startling declaration, though the GD Master knew Rhodes was right point. The thought of an entire planet suffering and perishing because of a virus with such a deadly reputation and impact was something he would not have thought of, whether he had the GD code or not. Chapter 262 Finding the Mysterious Laboratory. Peppy, riding on one of her Shek ships with Barriss and Ahsoka in tow, approaches a ship in the eastern swamps as the sun begins to set on the horizon. It's their ship, Barriss said to the Shek herders. Where are they then? Ahsoka asked. Not too far, I hope, Barriss interjected. The three men jumped off the loaded beasts and looked around. Barriss squatted down and ran his hands over the footprints. Their trail ends here. Then the two Padawans heard a strange buzzing noise and both looked at Pee-Pee, who was suddenly lifted up. The girls looked down just in time to see something with a lens rising from the ground with Pee-Pee standing on it. They immediately looked away from the camera, carefully positioning themselves out of sight. Pee-Pee, this is a scope. Don't let them see you, Ahsoka whispered in case the scope was recording. Whoa. The Gungan woman yelled, scrambling around to stay on top of the spinning object point as she was about to fall. It became too much for the Gungan. This caused Barriss to use the force and place her behind a large branch sticking out of the ground, right next to them. Once this happened, both Padawans followed suit before their scopes spun again. The three hid in their spots, staring at the scopes in the direction of their mounts. After exchanging glances, Ahsoka raised her wrist communicator and contacted Anakin. Master, are you there? Did you find them? Skywalker asked. Yes. I'm pretty sure they're in the lab. The whole area is wired with pressure sensors. There's no way to get in without being seen. But I'd love to. Do not attempt to go in there, Obi-Wan warned before a holographic image of a Jaskin appeared before them and highlighted a specific area. I need you to detonate a bunker buster bomb on the south end of the facility. It should cause a nice distraction and seal off the bomb area while we enter through the hatch. Leave it to us. Rex and his men are behind you, Anakin said. They will back you up. You two must stay out of sight and infiltrate the base. Luminara added. Focus on protecting the lab. I think the others can take care of themselves. Return to their respective gunships with the 3 GD and the Avengers. The dark side of the Force, Luminara said carefully. I feel its presence. Would people like those waiters be here? War Machine asked with concern. That may be so, said Luminara. War Machine mused. Maybe they did catch them. As dusk fell over the land, it was time to start planning. Hopefully this would be before anything happened to their captured comrades. A few minutes ago, Wendy is studying a particularly fascinating object. This shield is amazing, Wendy said. I've never seen anything as strong as this material. Rumlow, you said you knew what this metal was. Vibranium. It will be mine, the mercenary said rudely. What makes you think you'll take it so easily? Bill Veron, one of the Dark Servant, asked defiantly. I'm sure our Master Dooku will find it very useful. Come on. Rumlow snorted. You fools want to know the first thing about it. Bill said. In front of Rumlow, the mercenary did not back down. Cadrian stood between the two of them. That's enough, you two, Cadrian said in annoyance. Both men stared at each other until Valen was the first to lose. Boom. The entire facility shook the lab with a sudden explosion. We're almost there, Wendy shouted. All robots need to hatch number 1. The doctor looked at his prisoner, grabbed a helmet, and put it on. I guess your friends are here, Wendy said. They came faster than I thought. Seeing the doctor put on his helmet, Rumlow narrowed his eyes and walked straight to the doctor. What is IGAC? The former Hydra agent poked the top of his helmet. You're not going to release this virus now, are you? He threatened. What's the point of getting a virus if you don't use it? Wendy asked rhetorically. Where's the antidote? Rumlow grabbed the doctor's shoulders tightly, making him flinch. Second didn't do it. Rumlow snorted in disbelief. You didn't. You'll no doubt make one. The mercenary looked at the waiter. You really don't know there's a cure? The acolytes looked at each other. There was a silent conversation until they all nodded in agreement. The mercenary's argument is certainly convincing, noted Rodri, the mint-eyed gray-skinned waiter. Antidote, Dr. Wendy. Preceptor said expectantly. Where is it? Wendy wanted to argue, but the sound of blaster fire meant that this was not the time for pride or stubbornness. I'm going with the doctor, Crossbones said to the others. Anyone want to come get some extra protection? Cadrian and Rodri chose to go with the mercenaries, while Preset and Varen stayed behind to keep an eye on the Avengers and the Senators on their way out of the room. Rumlow made sure to take Cap's shield with him. Outside, Ahsoka and Barriss saw several gunships flying by, floating over a certain area of the lab point. Both men stepped out as Captain Rex, Team Domino, and a few other clones' gunships arrived. I'm coming too? PP asked. No, you stay here and make sure no one escapes, Ahsoka told the Shek herder. PP thought for a moment, then obeyed. The two Padawans ran forward, igniting their lightsabers, and leaped into the hole they had made, and the clones joined them a moment later with their lightsabers open. They, with the support of the clones of the 501st Legion, deflected blaster rounds from oncoming droids. Along with the other gunboats, they were positioned above the designated mark. The bombs have been dropped, and the GD, clones, and the lone Avenger have entered the facility. Chapter 263 Countdown. Anakin had been on edge for most of the day, since hearing about Padme's trip to the lab. There was a good chance they were going to destroy all life on the planet, including Thiz and the Senators. Not to mention Padme had died as a result of their aid point during this raid. He and Luminara needed to focus on finding Dr. Vendy, while Obi-Wan dealt with the virus bomb. He knows the stakes here better than anyone. Standing in the hallway, Luminara and Anakin stared in both directions as they clearly saw the clones following them. It's quiet here, Anakin pointed out. It looks like our Padawan's distraction is working, Luminara said. Let's not let it go to waste. They returned with Barriss and Ahsoka, and quickly blocked the blaster fire from the various battle droids on the opposite side. Go ahead. Come on. The order came too late, though, as the droid had rolled in from behind and now stood between them, shields raised. Back off, Barriss ordered. Arriving at the main lab, the two GD quickly stabbed the locked door with their lightsabers. They tried their best to cut it open, opening an entrance for them and the clones. Moments later, the door clicked into the ground, and the Republic forces quickly entered the main lab. Padme, Anakin shouted, seeing his wife tied up with the others. And us. Don't forget us. Peter shouted. GD. Prozor ignited his lightsaber, and held it to Captain Roger's neck, and Varen did the same for Padme. One more step, and your friend is dead. Luminara blinked, her eyes widening. Master Dibs. The blind master looked at Mirialan coldly. Yes, Master Unduli. I hope everything goes well for you. The droids in the room raised their blasters. The clones did the same. They were now at a stalemate. Anakin stared at his wife, and then the other Avengers with him, pausing for a moment on Steve, who glanced sideways at Peter, who was tied up at the back of the team. He glanced back at the GD Knight, a look that held Anakin's understanding. He acted like a loser. Do as he says, Anakin told the others, momentarily surprising his allies. As he deactivated his lightsaber, Spider-Man roared loudly in pain as the electrical bonds holding him back resisted his powers until he broke through. The two waiters were startled by this display of strength and were caught off guard for a moment as Peter immediately jumped up and kicked both of them away. Anakin and Luminara used their dual powers to knock the droids away, and the clones quickly took advantage of the opportunity to blast them away. Peter moved quickly, feeling every sting of electricity from his restraints, but he managed to release Cap, Black Widow, and Padme moments later, until his sixth sense gave him a warning. He lunged forward at Padme, a red blade nearly severing his head. Peter looked up in time to see the burly waiter, Rodri, being stopped by Anakin's advance. Their blades collided, and they entered a small-scale duel. After taking out several robots, Luminara engaged another waiter, and Captain America and Black Widow quickly joined the battle to assist the clones in destroying the remaining robots. The former GD Master quickly assessed the situation and used his own force thrust to throw Luminara back onto a collision course with Anakin, causing both GD to crash into Cap Point. Both waiters ran straight into the room, leaving them behind. Black Widow rolled her sore shoulder. What took you so long? Why didn't you guys explode sooner? Anakin shot back, standing next to Padme as she carefully held his hand in comfort and gratitude. "We're surrounded," Steve said. "But we need to keep moving. Brock Rumlow is here, and there are 2 other waiters with him. They've got Wendy with them. They said something about a cure for the virus," Black Widow added. "They took Cap's shield," Peter said angrily. "Led by the 2 Padawans, they have taken out many robots, but soon more arrived. They were slowly pushed back, losing 2 clone troopers in the process. I can't handle them." Ahsoka gritted her teeth and continued to assist Barriss in blocking the enemy's fire. "We need something, anything." Barriss was interrupted as the ceiling above them was pierced, releasing debris on top of the droids, crushing them in one fell swoop. Standing atop the wreckage was Master Kenobi. "Do you need help?" "Oh, it's good to see you, Master Kenobi," Ahsoka said, relieved. "It would be much appreciated," Barriss added with a smile as reinforcement began to come in through the newly opened hole. War Machine dropped in, his shoulder-mounted gun spinning, and the 2 robots entered the hallway, quickly reduced to scrap. "Looks like the fun is about to begin. Hopefully there won't be too many while we're here." Obi-Wan simply smiled at the Colonel's comment as he looked back at the Padawan. "Things are going well. The lab is safe, and hopefully Anakin and Luminara have reached Padme and the others by now." The group then ran down the corridor to reach their next destination. When they entered an intersection, they stopped when they were faced with the next wave of robots. "The robots are not alone." GD Knight, Rodri roared, igniting his crimson lightsaber. "Master Kenobi, you go ahead," Barriss said, unleashing her lightsaber, and Ahsoka did the same. "Find those bombs." "Ah, you sure?" Kenobi asked with concern. "They won't be alone," War Machine announced. His suit had multiple panels and weapons everywhere. The mint-eyed waiter in the helmet growled, raising his lightsaber, and the 2 girls and the Avengers themselves got into position. "Well then, new guy, let's get started." The waiter simply charged forward, and the Padawas clashed with their weapons. However, as the War Machine prepared to fire back, the robot opened fire. Anakin's team. They were already coming out of the room. "We have to act fast," said Black Widow. "Those waiters and Rumlow continue to hang out with Wendy. Something about a cure for this virus," Padme added. "It was made for the Separatists. There's a good chance Taku will want to take at least a vial with him. Then, we better hurry and find them before we lose them." Led by Kenobi and his squadron of clones, they entered the room identified as the one housing the deadly virus. "HMM. Looks like we found the bomb room," one of the clones commented, looking around at all the hanging bombs. "Yeah, luckily they don't seem to be active." Soon after this statement was made, every bomb in the room lit up. "I spoke too soon," Obi-Wan muttered before giving the clones an obvious order. "Deactivate them now." As they went to do so, he called his Padawan. "Anakin, I guess you didn't catch the doctor." "We didn't find him," Anakin said as he and the others were running down the hallway. "He wasn't here with Padme or the Avengers. He was taken away by Brock Rumlow and some of Dooku's attendants. Something about a cure for the virus." "Rumlow is here?" Obi-Wan frowned, the memory of the Hydra agent all too clear. "Dr. Vendy has activated the bomb remotely. They are counting down." "That's great," Anakin said sarcastically. "On top of that, one of them seems to be missing. It's down there somewhere." "Ahsoka, we have another situation." "Ahsoka is busy at the moment," Obi-Wan interrupted. "She's fighting one of Dooku's attendants alongside Barriss and Rhodes." "How many of these bastards are there here?" Anakin couldn't help but ask. "4. Peter answered. "It's okay," Steve interrupted. "Peter, you know what we are looking for. Go find that little robot that Wendy gave the bomb to." "Got it, Captain." Peter shot a web in the direction of a random corridor and rushed up as fast as he could. Elsewhere in the underground facility, Rumlow stands with Wendy and Cadrian, the former holding up a glass bottle containing a separate substance. "Behold, my greatest shame," Wendy said in a bitter tone. "The treatment for the blue shadow virus." Rumlow deftly snatched the vial from the doctor's hands and examined it for a moment. "It's best not to lie, Doctor." Brock's voice was low. The threat was clear and present, and the doctor couldn't hold back the swallow of fear as he saw the deadly look in the mercenary's eyes. "Let's get out of here," Cadrian said. "Leaving your fellow waiters behind?" Rumlow asked. "They Must flee, kill, or be killed, Cadrian said calmly. Weaklings are of no use to my master. Rumlow hummed in delight as they left the room, where they had been given the antidote, and ran to their ship to get out of there. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264, The Spread of the Virus. At this point, several small-scale battles were taking place in the lab, and Ahsoka, Barriss, and Rhodes had successfully taken out their dark attendants, but were caught off guard by Prozette Dubs and Bill Wallen, who picked up their fallen comrades and fled the scene point elsewhere. Peter is walking down a hallway and passes a conspicuous room. Looking back, he sees that it is a plant room and walks in, unsure of what this place is, until he sees a pair of stubby mechanical legs trying to hide. Peter smirked and crouched down, walking under a table, to see the robot holding the bomb. Spider-Man fired a web and pulled the bomb out of the robot's hand. It let out a startled scream and tried to jump up, but Peter caught it easily and lifted it up with ease. He looked at the bomb for a moment, examining it carefully, when a frown formed on his brow that turned into fear. "Guys," he said to the communicator in panic, throwing the bomb away. "The virus is not in the bomb." "What?" was the collective reaction of many people on the newsletter. Peter looked at the robot in his hands and glared at it. Peter whispered, deliberately tightening his grip on the robot so that it shook its head rapidly. Through clenched teeth, Peter noticed some scratches on the robot. Scratches that weren't on him. "Where did you get that?" Peter muttered. Surprisingly, the robot replied, "Mercenary." His eyes widened in shock. He dropped the robot and ran away. "The last bottle of virus is in Rumlow's hands, everyone," Peter shouted to the communicator. "He's with Wendy." Steve added as his team ran towards what looked like a hangar. There, they see multiple robots, and behind them are the waiter, Wendy, and Rumlow. "GD," the droid yelled, firing at them, the GD taking out their lightsabers to deflect the blasters, while the clones with them fired back. Natasha pulled out her own pistol, while Steve used a DC-15 rifle given to him by one of the clones. "Come on," Anakin said, rushing forward to cut the droid apart. Once inside the hangar, the three still conscious attendants pulled out their lightsabers, and Rumlow pumped his hydraulic gauntlet. "I want my shield back, Rumlow," Steve said flatly. "Come and get it," Rumlow challenged. Anakin's attention, however, was focused on Wendy, leaving. "So soon, Doctor, you are running out of time, GD," Wendy taunted. "You are fighting the inevitable. We tend to do that," Natasha said, and the group rushed towards the waiters and mercenaries. Wendy simply stepped onto the landing pad and initiated the ascent point. Rumlow is in hand-to-hand combat with Steve, and out of the corner of his eye sees the crazy doctor running away. He grunted, deftly blocked Roger's punch, and delivered a powerful counterattack. With his hydraulic gloves, he managed to knock Cap back into the air, and managed to get onto the platform in time. "Shit," Steve muttered. "They're going to run away." On the sidelines, some clones were firing at the good doctor. Their shots missed. "Don't shoot," Anakin shouted at them, blocking Cadrian's red blade. "If we knock that vial out of his hand, we are screwed." Suddenly, gunshots were heard, and through the door Anakin and his group used to enter the hangar, Rhodes came and flew straight to the landing platform. "Damn it," Rumlow growled, ready to fight. The colonel took flight, heading straight for the mercenary, who dodged multiple swings and retaliated with 2 punches to the chest. War Machine, now in the air, uses his thrusters to stabilize himself, raises his palm, and fires a repulsor beam at Rumlow, who hastily uses Captain America's shield to deflect the beam. "Rhodes," Black Widow called out to him. "They have the virus. If they give it up, we're dead. Catch them." Hearing this, Wendy took several vials of the virus from the storage containers on his body and threw them into the air. Seeing this, Rhodes was forced to disengage from the battle with Crossbones to retrieve the dropped hazardous materials before they hit anything. Crossbones just holds Cap's shield on his back when suddenly a web catches it from underneath and pulls it off his back. The mercenary turned around just in time to see the shield fly into Spider-Man's hands. "I'll Take it, he taunted, Spider-Man lowering his head. Here you go, Captain Pointy dropped his shield, and it landed directly into the hands of Steve Rogers. Thanks, Peter. It feels like being naked without it, he said, sliding his arm through the straps of the shield. Down below, the 3 waiters who remained knew that if they did not flee now, they would either be killed or captured. We need to get out of here, Prossett insisted. Agreed, Valent said. Where are the others? Cadrian asked. Either they are dead, captured, or have developed their own means of escape. No doubt we'll find out about any of them once Dooku is reported. Where are the mercenaries? The other waiters remained silent, not knowing how to deal with the man point. After chasing Rumlow and Wendy, Peter turned and hovered over the platform for a moment, while locking eyes with the wall crawler. He lost no time in firing 2 webs, and Rumlow raised his arms to catch them. Peter took the opportunity to pull himself forward and knock the mercenary down. Unfortunately, Rumlow holds up the vial he took from Wendy's assistant robot, the one that contained the blue shadow virus. Spider-Man's eyes widened at the sight of the vial, and he staggered in midair, his sixth sense blasting out in warning. But it was too late as he was knocked flat on his stomach by a powerful punch. Just a rookie, Rumlow taunted, walking towards the ship. Hey, what about me? Wendy yelled, only for him to be quickly pushed off the boat. Added weight. I don't need it now, Rumlow said in his gruff tone, entering the boat. It started up, and many of the people below looked up in shock. This was the chance the waiters needed, forcing the GD, clones, and Avengers out of the way, and making a hasty retreat. We have to go up. War Machine had already propelled himself into the air, and Anakin jumped up behind him. Spider-Man also joined the pursuit, and climbed onto the platform in time to see Rumlow's spaceship rising from the ground. Instinctively, Peter shot out 2 webs to grab the ship, but it looked like he was going to have to deal with more than just the ship. He heard a maniacal laugh, and looked over to Wendy, who was holding another pair of vials. Here you go, Wendy said, throwing them into the air and giggling madly. Spider-Man gasped beneath his mask, quickly releasing his webs as the ship lifted off into the air. He fired another pair of webs, catching the vials, and pulling them straight into his hands. I'm going to have a heart attack if this keeps going on, Peter muttered, sighing with relief. Then he looked up and saw that Anakin had caught up to Wendy and raised his lightsaber to his face. You are under arrest, Dr. Wendy. War Machine flew past them all, chasing the ship as it began to gain height. As he got closer, the craft tipped properly in the air and flew at full speed. War Machine tried to catch up to it, but the rear ramp suddenly opened. Then several thermal detonators came out and rained down on the colonel, who hurriedly avoided them. The bombs exploded around him, and the shockwave stunned him instantly. That was all it took for the ship to properly escape its pursuer, who circled in the air as he watched the ship fly farther and farther away. Fuck, War Machine muttered in frustration. He couldn't believe that this was happening. All the while, Anakin and Peter are facing Wendy, who holds another vial in her hand, making sure to indicate that if they try anything, it will fall, and the virus will be released. Come on. You guys. PP appeared out of nowhere and tackled the doctor to the ground. In the melee, the storage container containing the vial came loose and fell a few meters away. Fortunately, it was not broken. Wendy tried to retrieve it, but was attacked by the Shek herders again, which quickly led to his defeat. When the lightsaber was aimed at his face, then the doctor heard the beeping of his wrist communicator speed up. He glanced over and saw that the devices connected to all the bombs below had reached the end of their timers. Haha, the bomb is going to explode, and we're all going to die. Dr. Wendy laughed crazily. Come on, die. Then he saw the device on his arm suddenly shut down. What happened? Anakin was curious about what was going on down there, so he called his Padawan. Ahsoka, are you there? Master, I'm here. The bomb has been deactivated. There's plenty of time. Have you found Wendy? Found it. Have you seen Padme? She's right next to me. We're all fine, Ahsoka said. Anakin smiled and looked down at the doctor. This day is there. Above the planet, a lone Separatist ship flies away from Naboo, followed by several other Separatist ships carrying escaped waiters. Inside the shuttle, once Rumlow saw that he was safe, he pulled something out of his side pocket. Lifting the lid, the former Hydra agent chuckled beneath his helmet. "Enjoy the surprise, Rogers." After saying that, he pressed the button. Back down below in the underground facility, we see the main lab, where all the vials of the blue shadow virus are kept. Several clones are already there, trying to keep an eye out for anything amiss out of nowhere. They heard a faint beeping noise in the air. They thought it was someone's wrist communicator going off, but it turned out to be something else. It didn't take long to find the source, because the beeping sound was coming from the glass container that contained all the vials. When the Avengers show up at the facility, Rumlow knows the job will be a lost cause, so he decides to devise a backup plan to deliver a fatal blow when they least expect it. In a discreet action, the former Hydra agent placed some bombs where the bottles of blue shadow virus were stored. Said bombs were connected to a trigger obtained by Rumlow, which had an experimental range that could reach from the surface of a planet through the atmosphere. Now, back to the present. Boom, the explosion rocked the entire lab, alerting everyone still inside and those on the landing platform. "What is that?" Luminara asked with great concern. "It came from inside the lab," Kenobi said. After saying this, many people began to realize what had just happened. One of them was Nouveau Vendy, who started laughing maniacally. "It's all in vain," Wendy shouted ecstatically. "The virus has spread. Naboo's death is approaching. You are all doomed to fail." Chapter 265, Peter's Memoirs. Peter turned on his camera, and he was now standing in a completely new room. "Okay, so." The boy stared at his reflection, mask still on. I'm in space. That's where the other Avengers go. Can you believe it? I'm in space with the Avengers. And we somehow got caught up in a war between robots and clones." The boy began to talk non-stop. "It's like every Earthling's dream. And I'm living it." After a while, he heard a knock on the door and a familiar female voice came from the other side. "Peter, are you okay?" Oh, yeah, yes, come in, Ahsoka." Ahsoka soon walked into the room with a confused look on her face. "Who are you talking to?" she asked puzzledly. "Well, I'm vlogging to myself." "Video blog? Video log?" Ahsoka nodded. "What for?" "Because it's awesome. Not many people on my planet can say they've been to space and met 1,000 new species in a week," Peter said bluntly, to a burst of laughter from the new friends he had made. Ahsoka laughed loudly at her friend's enthusiastic response. "I think so." The camera cuts away once more, this time from Peter's point of view, as Spider-Man swings around the bustling city planet of Coruscant. Whoa. It's obvious to anyone who's seen the recording how much Peter is enjoying this right now. Then again, it's not every day that you get your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man climbing walls and web swinging in a city on an alien planet. He doesn't just do this for the thrills. While this took some getting used to, Peter did this for several reasons. First, the obvious one is that it's fun, and he wants to experience the thousands of facets of culture on this planet for as long as possible. The second is to learn about all species and get to know the place better, since the Avengers' current home is the Jedi Temple. 3 is the PC feels while rocking and patrolling and helping those in need. Fourthly, and finally, he was now to appear in the building marked for him. When he reached a building, he reached behind him and grabbed something strapped to his back. The door opened, revealing a blue-headed alien that reminded him of Earth's earliest alien life. He remembered that these species were called Duras. Peter held up a metal trash can. Peter said happily, "Delivery service." "Hey, thanks," the Duras said happily, taking the trash can from him. He tipped the New York native, letting Peter nod his thanks, before heading back to the city skyline. The recording flashes through several more instances, showing Peter meeting a Coruscant guard and introducing him to the deliciousness of donuts on a ship with several clones from the 501st Legion, fighting alongside Sam and Pietro and battling the Avengers, Jedi, and clones on various planets. The final video is Peter recording himself sitting between two of his friends, who he had become very close with during his stay on Coruscant and throughout the galaxy. "Hey, Aunt May, it's Peter," Peter said, waving at the camera. "I don't know if this will ever reach you or find you somehow, but I just miss you so much." Peter slumped slightly in his seat and sighed. Ahsoka and Barriss exchanged a look before taking over from their friend. "Hello, Madam May." Ahsoka said cheerfully. Your nephew is doing fine here. We have been helping to take care of him while he has remained here. He's always been a good friend to both of us, Barriss added with a serene smile. On the lush planet of Naboo, in the swamps below, several men stood on a platform, expressions of shock and fear etched on their faces next to them. A mad scientist cackled with sadistic glee as he babbled on about the liberation of the blue shadow virus. You are all doomed. Dr. Wendy chuckled gleefully. The virus has been released, and the planet will. The mad scientist was effectively silenced by a swift punch from War Machine straight to the jaw point. Anakin immediately went to his calm. Ahsoka, what happened down there? Are you okay? She, along with Barriss, Natasha, Captain Rex, and several other clones, ran as fast as they could, away from the oncoming blue cloud that was heading straight for them. The facility was compromised, Ahsoka replied into her calm. Go to the safe room. Come on. Barriss shouted, pointing ahead. The blue mist rushed through the corridor like a tidal wave, and many doors were quickly closed one after another before the gas reached them. We've got the safe room. Captain Rex shouted. No chance. Hurry. The door is closing. In an instant, the door stopped. Natasha looked to her side, staring at the two Padavas who were using the Force to stop it from closing. Don't worry, Barriss said flatly. Go in. Ahsoka yelled. As the last clone came in, Natasha quickly jumped out of the gap. Once through, Rex called out to Padawan. Hurry up. They nodded as they saw a pair of clones trying their best to hold the door to the safe room. After retracting the Force, the two teenagers saw the clones quickly struggle to pry the door open. It wasn't long before the Padawan jumped out of the gap. The clones immediately let go as the panel snapped shut. In just a few minutes, the communication came to life. Please, tell me you guys are okay. Natasha was the first to respond. We are fine. We're in a safe room for now. But I'm worried about something. What on earth? Ahsoka asked. The remaining robots are here first. No doubt they'll try to break out. We need to do everything we can to stop them, Barriss said. But we don't have any protective suits to protect against the virus, Ahsoka pointed out worriedly. We cannot let this virus escape, or Naboo will suffer a disaster, Barriss countered. Then what are you worried about? Rex pointed out. I saw some virus get in here, Natasha said rather grimly. The door didn't close fast enough. Chapter 266, Tracking Rumlow. It might take too long to heal, Steve pointed out. We are running out of time. So what can we do now? Peter asked worriedly. Everyone there is infected with this blue virus, and Wendy said there is no cure. The Jedi Knight and the captain didn't get a chance to reply as War Machine and Luminara returned from a quick reconnaissance around the underground base. Is everything alright? Anakin asked bluntly. Whatever the explosion was, it didn't cause any surface damage, War Machine said. At present, the situation is under control, Luminara said calmly. As good as it gets, Anakin muttered under his breath, his teeth clenched in anger. Seeing his frustrated expression, Steve spoke to the young Jedi. Be patient, Anakin. We will find a way to save them. Easy for you to say, Steve. No, Steve shot back. But we have to keep our cool here. Otherwise, it will only lead us to make rash decisions. As much as he hated to admit it, Steve was right. Obi-Wan saw this and nodded approvingly. First, we need to get Wendy back to the capital and sort things out from there. Any ideas would be helpful. Anakin said bitterly. Well, we're dealing with a virus, right? Peter offered. One that was taken out thousands of years ago. So that means there must be at least a cure. Dr. Evil must know something about it, or maybe not at all, Kenobi said. Can we look through some old files on the solution back then? War Machine asked. Luminara shook her head. It would take too long, sorting through all this information. Anakin's frown deepened. So what can we do? Because right now, it doesn't look like we have much choice. Just then, Peter snapped his fingers. Maybe we can find the guy in the helmet and those waiters. Peter said. I bet they know something. Maybe they even got a cure. The others looked at him in confusion. Why do you say that? War Machine asked. So, what should we do? Anakin asked after a moment. I put a tracker on one of their ships, Peter said proudly. Isn't it a little late for you to tell us this now? Master Kenobi asked bluntly. Peter was slightly embarrassed. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot just now. Steve sighed, but gave a look of understanding. Okay. We've got Wendy out, and we are on our way to get the tracking signal up and running. We can't waste any precious time now, Steve said. We are taking a pretty big gamble with this, you know that, right? What choice do we have? They returned the Separatist scientists to the capital, and the team immediately returned to the Republic ship in orbit in order to track down Rumlow's signal. Luminara and War Machine remained on Naboo, setting up a small camp near the underground base and maintaining constant contact with their trapped friends and allies. They had to ensure that, if any droids escaped or broke through to the surface, they would stop the spread of the virus at all costs. The fate of Naboo depended on it. Therefore, a four-man team consisting of Steve Rogers, Peter Parker, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi set out to track down Rumlow. At this moment, the four of them stood inside Anakin's flagship, the Resolute, on the bridge around the holotable. Peter creates a connection between his suit and the ship's systems. The teenager from Earth was delighted that he was able to get his tracker to work effectively. With the help of the Republic ship, the tracking signal was significantly improved. Okay, Peter said, his mask on, HUD showing his tracker. I think I know where Rumlow flew to point from the coordinates. The GD master currently aboard the ship was able to see where their destination was. Now, Shadow? Anakin exclaimed in amazement. That's in HUD space, allied territory, right? Steve asked, unsure of this. Not exactly, Obi-Wan said, frowning. Despite the great control the Hutts have, Shadow has always been a difficult planet to rule. It is also known as the Smuggler's Planet. Anakin added, it is the crime capital of that controlled territory, although we are allied with the Hutts, but I little believe we'll be welcome there, Obi-Wan said, crossing his arms. It seems that Rumlow chose the right place at that time, said Steve. It won't be easy to find him, Obi-Wan said. You have traces on his ship that can only track his ship, not his people. Who knows how we can find him? What does this planet look like? Peter asked. Like Coruscant, Anakin answered immediately. Totally lawless, crime-ridden, and corrupt to the core. They may say there is order, but that's just the Hutts, and it's loose at best. Really, as long as you don't incur the wrath of the Hutts, Shadow has free reign. Sounds like Chicago, Peter couldn't help but comment. If we are to go to a planet that has no rules in the past, then we must travel light, Obi-Wan said. It will not be easy to find the people we seek. Anakin crossed his arms, a deep frown on his face. Are you sure? Is there nothing else we can do? Shadow isn't far away, and it's within Republic-controlled space. In theory, Kenobi said. Can't we find a way to get the ingredients needed to create a cure? Anakin asked. You saw what Typho showed us, Anakin, Steve reminded him. Going into Separatist-controlled space right now isn't exactly ideal. This feels like a serious gamble. Skywalker sighed in dissatisfaction and smoothed his hair. Your force isn't working? Peter asked, as the two GD stared at him blankly. Undeterred, he continued. You know, the force isn't supposed to give you a foreknowledge or a revelation, like a guide, or well, no, Peter, that's not exactly the case. Obi-Wan said with a smile. That's not necessarily how the force works. Steve shook his head. We can't waste any more time here. Anakin nodded, his expression firm. He's right. We need to go to Shadow now. Our friends need us. I do think there needs to be a better way, Obi-Wan said. Take a naval star destroyer and drive into a crime-ridden planet would immediately draw attention, and Rumlow would no doubt run away at the sight of it. Agreed. Steve nodded. Then let's take the Dusk. Chapter 267 Shadow. In HUD space, a lone starship emerges from hyperspace and flies toward a planet with a bright light on its surface, so bright that it can be seen from space. We are here, Anakin announced from the pilot's seat of the Dusk. Shadow, Obi-Wan said after a moment. The Smuggler's Planet. That's not what we used to call it, Anakin said with a derisive snort. Getting used to it? Peter said, glancing at the GD. Skywalker looked away from the others and let out a heartless sigh. Back on Tatooine, that's where I lived before I was taken to the GD temple, Anakin revealed. Tatooine? Peter muttered. Where The Outer Rim, Anakin said. In case you're wondering, we call this place Little Slagland because the Hutts control it. Skywalker's tone indicated that he didn't want to dwell too long on the subject of the group, and Steve and Peter exchanged a look before they both turned to Obi-Wan, who stared silently at his former student until he was facing the planet they were now descending upon. They eventually found a landing pad that didn't require any kind of permission point. Upon arriving at Nash Adder, the group is hit by an unusual smell, overly bright lights and an eerie feeling that they are now being targeted. Not because they did something to upset someone, just because they are here. That's how it works here. This is a disturbing phenomenon, to say the least. Okay, now this is, Steve said dryly as he surveyed the area. It is indeed a large city, like Coruscant. However, when viewing it up close, the group can see how polluted and dangerous it is. The more legitimate businesses are located in the higher levels of the planet, while the seedier businesses are located deeper below. The legal one will consider all things in good faith. The underground area is where the criminal gangs are, and they change every once in a while. It's a great place to get goods, transportation, and information, mostly through aggressive or unethical tactics. All in all, it's not a good place for any Jedi or Avenger to be. Obi-Wan took a moment to take in his surroundings. What's that smell? Peter asked, wrinkling his nose under his mask. What smell? Pollution, festering and rampant corruption, shady corporations, or rotting corpses that might be nearby? Anakin asked rhetorically. Well, it gets dark really fast here, Anakin, Peter said in a dry voice. Let's get moving, Steve said. Don't just stay here. Agreed. Kenobi nodded, and the group left their spaceship because many people were staring at them. As the group began walking through the streets of Nash Adder, they moved cautiously, remaining vigilant as they knew they were in a hostile environment. The people around them are either criminals, bounty hunters, pirates, smugglers, opportunists, or all the other scum of society. What the group doesn't know is that while they are tracking a rogue mercenary from Earth, there's another Earthborn native on Nash Adder at this very moment. On the lower level, a man with a scruffy beard sat at a table in a shop he had set up, which was just a cover. At this moment, the man held a piece of purple metal in his hand, and he sniffed it deeply. The man exhaled, a look of satisfaction on his face. Perfectly made. I'm glad you managed to procure this for me. If I had known you would do that, I would have bought you some spices, said the rude Quarren. The bearded man gave a maniacal chuckle. This gives me the feeling I want, he said with wild delight, holding up the metal in his hand. This is what I want. The man then grabbed the metal in his hand with his other hand. It suddenly moved and split apart, revealing its robotic innards, where the metal was stored. Now, then, the man said, staring at the crowd in the store. What's the next order? We have Republic stooges here. A voice called from the doorway of his shop, prompting many to look at the newcomer. GD night. In an instant, many people present began to rush to leave. The man watched in utter confusion as they scrambled to evacuate the area. Hey, what are you guys doing? The man with the advanced robotic arm shouted angrily. We still have business to do. There's no choice. We have to go. The GD are coming. What the hell are you doing? What the hell is a GD? The man he was talking to pointed behind him. The man with the robotic arm turned around and froze when he spotted 4 men walking down the other end of a path. It's the guys with the silver hilts on their belts. This one doesn't really focus on the GD, but rather their companions. Avengers. He muttered under his breath. He acted cool, but he spotted the youngest of them all. He clearly remembered seeing him when he last returned to Earth before coming to this galaxy. Spider-Man. In this case, he needed to pack his bags quickly and get away before he was caught by people like them. The man shook his head. Now, he'd better get out of here. Whenever the Avengers showed up, chaos was sure to ensue, and he'd rather not get caught up in it, like he had the past few times. The 2 GD and 2 Avengers wandered around aimlessly as they were unsure of where to go in this crime-ridden city. Where do we start? Steve asked, looking around. Not sure, Anakin admitted. This is Nash Adder we are talking about. We can't walk around and ask people if they've seen who we are looking for, so what can we do? Peter asked, glad he was wearing a mask now, because this place was really creeping him out. Anakin muttered to himself thoughtfully. Peter, is your tracker still working? Yes, it is. Then, we find the ship, and go from there, the Jedi announced. They may have left it behind, but this is a clue. They may be nearby. If not, we ask around from there. Peter quickly activated his tracking function in his suit, his mask HUD clearing a path for him. Spider-Man took the lead, and ran in front of him, with the others following behind him. As they followed the signal, they eventually came to a dirty and rundown warehouse, with the boat Rumlow was using on a separate platform some distance away from the warehouse. Chapter 268 found. There were only 4 people in the warehouse, instead of the original group of 5 that had initially gone to Dinashada. The man who separated from the group was one of the Sith attendants, who was sent to reunite with Master Dooku and deliver an important item that would undoubtedly help the CIs better conduct the war. Currently, only 3 waiters and a deadly mercenary occupied the quarters, and they regarded him with distrust. Rumlow sat alone at the table he had prepared for himself, removing his helmet and reinforced hydraulic gauntlets. Currently, he is repairing some of the damage he sustained during his time on Naboo. It's to be expected, really, when dealing with a Jedi and the damn Avengers. Hey, are you still listening to us? An irritated female voice said. The former Hydra agent simply rolled his eyes and continued welding parts of his glove together. After a moment, the glove flew out of his own hand and fell into the hands of the annoyed female Sith waitress Zabrak. Listen to me when I speak. Before she could finish her words, she felt a knife suddenly pressed against her neck. What? Part of me not wanting to fight in this war. Didn't you understand when I first told you, idiots? Rumlow growled, his charred face adding to his intimidating presence. Cadrian Say only growled until the two were quickly separated by former Jedi Master Prozet Dibs. That's enough, Prozet said in a firm voice, pushing Cadrian away from Rumlow. The last thing we need is a fight and attracting unwanted attention. Behind the waiter came a very loud and obvious haughty snort. What will the rabble out there do to us? Rodri said in a smug tone. We are on a crime-ridden planet. No one will bother to investigate any commotion we create unless we piss off one of the planet's leaders. It is for this very reason that we should not draw unnecessary attention to ourselves, Prozet Dibs snapped. Also, this planet is under direct HUD control. The Hutts are currently allied with the Republic, so please be aware of that. Why are we staying here? Cadrian asked loudly, annoyed. We've sent Varen to deliver the virus vial to Dooku. I would have thought we'd have left by now. You know why, Prozet said, now turning to Rumlow, who had returned to his workstation. He has taken a keen interest in the treatment. Then, why not just take it from him? Rodri asked with a small growl in his voice. Try it, freak, Rumlow said without even looking at the waiter. You'll regret it. What's going to stop us from killing you? Cadrian said with his eyes wide open. A lot of things. You're only saying this to delay the inevitable. A pathetic ploy. Rumlow looked up at Zabrak, unimpressed. You don't realize that the same Avengers who beat you to a pulp fought me for years. And your bullshit force powers don't affect me, understand? Say's brow furrowed in anger at the reminder. It was sad to say, but Rumlow was right, considering some of the waiter's previous experiences with the Earthlings. The force barely worked on them. Dooku talks about Rumlow and the Avengers seeming to exist around them, proving difficult to influence these people with typical force powers. Only someone as powerful or knowledgeable in the force as their master Dooku could achieve more noticeable results on the mercenaries. For now, the waiters are here to guard Rumlow under the Earl's instructions. While they await the arrival of the Separatist shuttle. The room quickly fell silent for a while. Snapped. Hearing the sudden sound in the distance, many people blinked in confusion. Beep. Closing his eyes, the Zabrak attendant focused his attention into the force. I sense something. A familiar. I found them. The group turned and walked towards the source and found a blue-red human projectile flying towards them. On his arm was a man holding a blue lightsaber. After a while, the two men rushed into the hiding place, followed by 2 others. GD. Rodri exclaimed, igniting his lightsaber just in time for a clash with Anakin Skywalker. Avengers. Prozet Dibs yelled, his own lightsaber bouncing off Captain America's shield. Arsehole. Spider-Man said, waving directly at Rumlow, who deftly armed himself with the gauntlet and kicked up the table he was using to repair it. The table flew towards Spider-Man, who caught it with his webs, spun it in the air, and threw it back at Crossbones. Rumlow simply swung his armored fist with all his might, the hydraulic gauntlet smashing the table into pieces, and then he swung again, punching Spider-Man in the chest. The young hero flew backwards and accidentally collided with Preset Dibs, and both of them fell heavily backwards. Captain America, who had been fighting Dibs, blinked before hearing running footsteps heading straight towards him. "Nice to see you so soon, Cap." Steve turned and raised his shield just in time to absorb the impact of the enhanced fist coming towards him. "You too, Rumlow." The super soldier was stressed. He pushed his fist back, his own fist colliding with Crossbones's, though this proved to be a mistake as the hydraulic fist overwhelmed Cap's fist, sending him flying back. Obi-Wan was currently engaged in combat with Cadrian Say, the GD Master, calmly blocking all of the Zabrak's attacks. "You've improved, Say," Obi-Wan said with a smile. The Sith waiter simply growled in response, a crazed grin on his face. "There was a time when I would have found great satisfaction in hearing the praises of the great Obi-Wan Kenobi," she chided, preparing to strike, only for the GD Master to block it. "But now, the highest compliment I can receive is if I strike you down. It is important to have aspirations in this galaxy," Obi-Wan said, clashing with Cadrian's lightsaber. The two of them momentarily locked in combat. "But be sure to keep them realistic." Pushing past her, she raised her lightsaber above her head, which gave Obi-Wan the opportunity to push her into a nearby wall. She felt pain in her back, but the Zabrak quickly rebounded and leapt at the GD Master. Before she could reach him, however, she felt something grab her back, throwing her out, and she found herself wrapped in webbing, rendering her completely immobile. "Thank you, my young Padawan," Obi-Wan said cheekily. Peter simply gave his pseudo-mentor a thumbs up as he waved to Cap and Rumlow while Obi-Wan ran off to assist Anakin, who was currently fighting the other two attendants on his own. Meanwhile, Steve has been engaged in fierce hand-to-hand combat with Rumlow, with the merchants fighting particularly brutally and mercilessly. All the blows Steve launched at him were neutralized. "Is this what you are capable of, Rogers?" Rumlow asked back, addressing the good captain who was temporarily stunned by the hit. Steve gritted his teeth and retaliated with a quick headbutt, followed by a barrage of punches and a powerful shield swing to his face. The final blow sent Crossbones flying, landing hard on the ground. A small bottle fell out of his armored vest and landed on the floor. Chapter 269, Spider-Man in Danger. Peter saw the vial rolling on the ground and took quick action. "Yo, shoot." Outer web, ready to pull the bottle back. However, the web was quickly severed by a red lightsaber before its owner could snatch the vial. "Thank you, boy," said Preset Dibs, holding up the vial. "Oh no," Anakin yelled, doing a downward swinging somersault that Dibs blocked with one of his arms. Moments later, Dibs has the vial snatched from him by Obi-Wan, who then encounters the waiter Audrey, who attempts to decapitate him. The attack distracted Kenobi enough, as Dibs had pushed Anakin back while he pulled the vial from Obi-Wan's hand. However, the vial was once again caught in Spider-Man's webs, and this time it managed to make its way into the young teen's hands. He then meets Cadrian Say, who suddenly appears in front of Peter, causing the bottle to drop from his hands. Thankfully, it was close enough to the ground that it didn't break. Everyone immediately rushed madly towards the vial. Preset reached out and tried to use the force to summon the vial into his hand, but it was pulled away by one of Peter's webs. Crossbones pushed Anakin out of the way and was about to rush for the bottle when he was hit in the back of the head by the shield thrown by Cap. Cadrian and Rodri rushed to the vial, and Anakin and Obi-Wan wielded their azure lightsabers together to meet the crimson lightsabers of Say and Rodri. As their lightsabers clashed, the respective force users quickly reached out to each other. In an instant both sides were struggling to outwit the other as they pushed each other on two fronts. Everything around them began to shake and break apart. Eventually, thanks to Captain America's involvement, Obi-Wan was able to win the battle and send his opponent back to the warehouse. Soon after, the old GD was free to help him form a Padawan Anakin overpower his opponent. Blast. The GD. Rodri hissed, and his mouth was covered by a ball of spider web. Then, multiple spider webs shot out at him, hitting multiple parts of his body. By the end, he was sent to a nearby wall and completely trapped in a giant net that covered every part of his body, except his nose and eyes. Rumlow gritted his teeth, realizing that this had become a lost cause. Prozet, Naboo, and Cadrian were fighting back against the Jedi Knights and Captain America, and he could tell it was only a matter of time before the trio overpowered the waiters, one of whom was already being politely attended to by the youngest Avenger. Rumlow punched a command into his wrist device, then slid behind the far wall, opened a metal cover, and crawled inside. As the cover closed, he pulled out a detonator and pressed a button. Crossbones ran to his backup shuttle, still having a moment to wait for what was about to land on the warehouse bomb. A chain reaction ensued as the ceiling, support beams and foundation of the entire warehouse began to explode. The entire area shook violently, and multiple explosions occurred inside and outside the warehouse. "The damn mercenary!" Cadrian roared. "We need to leave now," said Prozet, quickly rushing over to the still trapped Rodri and rescuing him together with Say. The floor began to collapse beneath all of their feet, causing many to quickly use the force to leap high into the air to reach safety and then make a mad dash out of the building. The waiters knew they would later pursue Rumlow for this act of treachery, but now they needed to flee the area so they would not be captured by Republic forces. The two Jedi Knights quickly used the force to help Steve get airborne so that he could land at a safe distance. After landing, he walked towards the nearest exit. As all this was going on, Obi-Wan followed behind Cap, with Anakin close behind. However, when he looked back, he saw Peter rushing in the opposite direction. "Peter, we need to leave." Peter didn't answer, but ran at full speed towards the fallen floor, where the antidote lay. As the floor began to crumble more and more, the vial fell through the opening gap. Peter then dove into the water to catch up with the descending object. He fired several web cables to the side, quickly picking up speed to get closer to the vial. He was only centimeters away from grabbing the vial when his spider sense kicked in. Only he was too slow and everything was plunged into darkness. The last thing he heard was Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Steve yelling his name as he was buried under the rubble of a collapsed building. The three stood in front of the crater that was once Rumlow's hiding place, with expressions of panic and fear on their faces. "I can't feel him," Anakin said bluntly, before staring at Steve. "Damn it, why did you have to leave the Force? It's not our fault." "Anakin," Obi-Wan chided. I know," Skywalker said. "It's just, we should have seen this coming. What happened to us? We came charging in like a bunch of battle droids, and come on." Steve jumped into the crater. "We have to find him." When he awoke, he felt himself gasping for air and could barely breathe properly. Everything hurt, pain shooting through his body from head to toe. He could barely move now, with so many pieces on his body. It almost crushed him. He frantically tried to remove his mask, breathing heavily and taking in deep gulps of air thick with dust and debris. He could barely move his arms as he threw away his mask and tried to find a way to escape. When one hears the exaggerated statement that the weight of the world rests on one man's shoulders, most people assume it is a metaphor and a psychological statement. But now, Peter Parker felt it in the most real way possible, as he felt everything crumble around him. Peter began to feel like he was losing his breath and he began to struggle, trying his best to lift the large plate of metal off his back, but to no avail. He was beginning to panic now. Okay, Peter muttered to himself, pushing against the metal plate again, but failing again. Now he was beginning to panic, and Peter looked up as best he could. Hello, who? He yelled desperately. "Captain? Anakin? Obi-Wan? I'm stuck. I'm here. I'm trapped. I can't move." Second Conti, feeling his consciousness becoming increasingly erratic. Peter's eyes dropped as he lowered his head. Chapter 270 Self-Rescue. With a thud, the young hero opened one eye and raised his head. Is that a sound? What is that sound? Peter the Queen's hero took a sharp breath and suddenly found himself in a completely different environment. One that was very familiar to him. Here we are. Peter looked back and saw that it was his Uncle Ben sitting in the driver's seat of the car. How on earth did he get here? He didn't know if this was an illusion or just the extreme stress he was going through, but he was going through it now. "Okay, thanks Uncle Ben." Peter found the words coming out of his mouth as he was about to get out of the car. Wait a minute, Peter, Ben said patiently. We need to talk for a minute. Can't we talk about it later? Peter pleaded a little. Okay, we need to talk now, Ben said, turning off the car radio. The boy sighed. Why are we talking about this now? Your aunt and I are starting to get worried about you, since we haven't spoken in a while. Uncle Ben pointed out. We hardly recognize you now. You've been skipping your chores for weeks now. You've been locking yourself in your room regularly, and now I hear you're getting in fights at school. Hey, I didn't start that fight, you know that. Peter interrupted him with a frown. But you did. What should I do? Run away? His uncle shook his head slightly. No, you shouldn't have run away. But, Peter, look, Ben said, staring at his nephew. You're changing. I understand. I went through the exact same thing you're going through now. No, not really, said Peter contemptuously. Peter. Ben placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. I may not know or understand, or even relate to what you yourself are going through. But what I do know is that in these years, a boy becomes the man he will become for the rest of his life. Just know who you are at all times. You afraid I'm going to turn into some kind of thug or criminal? Peter asked defensively. His uncle just shook his head. Don't worry about me anymore. I'll figure it out. You're just worried about what your friends will think of you. No, it's not like that, Uncle Ben. Peter said frustratedly. His uncle sighed softly. Peter, I know you'll endure a lot, Ben said. You're so smart. I think you'll go through more than others. But you need to prevent yourself from straying down a path that might take you to a destination you don't like. Seeing his nephew's frustrated confusion, Ben said something he once heard his father tell him, and Peter's late father. Remember, Peter, with great power comes great responsibility. His nephew looked up at his uncle and from behind, a white light began to glow and envelop the two. Remember this in the end. Things went from fantasy to reality. His eyelids fluttered. How long has he been unconscious? It didn't take long for Spider-Man to refocus on his surroundings. More importantly, what is he here for now? Peter's head tilted back, looking at his discarded mask as he stared at the serum that was only centimeters away from him. Although he was just staring at it, he subconsciously felt his fingers brushing against half of his face. It was as if half of his mask was there. He then glanced back at the serum and thought of Ahsoka, Barriss, Natasha, Captain Rex, and the other clones waiting for their return. He is now the only one with the antidote within reach that can heal them all. But he did not try his best to complete the task. As he laid his eyes on the vial, he heard the words again in the back of his head. With great power, it's a big responsibility, Peter said to himself, breathing loudly and starting to tense up. I remember Uncle Ben. I remember. He placed his hands on the metal of his body and began to push, even though his body immediately screamed in protest. But he did not relent, only continued to increase his already great strength. Come on, Peter, he shouted. Come on, Peter. Go Spider-Man. Go Spider-Man. Peter began to scream at this point as he felt every fiber of his being snap from his strength, but he held on as the rubble began to shake and crumble above him. Spider-Man was roaring loudly now, and he did his best to lift the debris off of him, yelling as he went, with groans everywhere around him. Finally, with the last of his strength he pushed it away from him, stumbling to grab the vial and his mask without hesitation. With shaking limbs he crawled out of the hole he was in, and saw three stunned faces. Second, I see, Peter said with a weak but victorious smile, holding up the vial of the blue shadow virus cure. The three were still quite shocked, and Obi-Wan was the first to come to his senses. Peter, what? There's no time now. Peter groaned. We have to hurry. Get back. Peter found himself falling forward, and Anakin immediately caught him. I see. Peter didn't respond because he was unconscious. You know how he did it? Anakin said, looking at a still stunned super soldier. Steve just shook his head, a small smile on his face. This is truly surprising, Obi-Wan said as he moved over to help his former Padawan. Come on, let's not waste our chance. We have to hurry. It is good. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel. Mundo fanfic novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271 No Feelings, Only. Returning to the swamps of Naboo couldn't have come quicker, and when they reached the sealed bunker they were able to rescue everyone in time before more people died from the airborne virus. Once everyone is rescued, steps are taken to properly eradicate the blue shadow virus once and for all. The antidote was being produced at top speed as everyone in the underground bunker was transported back to the palace on Naboo and taken to the medical ward, where everyone alive was treated. In one of the areas, Peter sat wearily in a chair between the two beds that Barriss and Ahsoka currently lay in. Spider-Man had barely moved from his position since they had been brought here. In another area of the medical ward, Steve stood not far from where Natasha currently rested. She and the others will make a full recovery if they get enough rest, Anakin announced. Glad to hear that. Steve nodded happily. How are Padme and your Padawan? They're fine, Anakin said. Speaking of which, Anakin recalled the hilarious sight of Peter wincing dramatically when Ahsoka had poked his unusually sore arm. The Jedi smirked at the pained groan that Peter let out. They seem to be awake now because the three teenagers are slowly growing up after a short separation. I will never forget his astonishing performance on Nash Adder, Anakin said. Steve nodded. Me too. I just knew the heroes in Queens were powerful, but actually seeing them is another thing. Yeah, Queen? Like that music group. There's a place on Earth called Queens. That's where Peter is from, so they named the place after the band? Steve rolled his eyes, knowing he needed to explain a little more about Earth culture to clear up some of the confusion. Look, remember New York? Yeah, it has 5 boroughs. I never lost faith in you, Peter, Ahsoka said weakly. Neither have I, Barriss said in the same tone. Peter hummed softly. That's good, because to be honest, there was a moment when I almost thought I was dead. Peter soon felt a hand on his arm. He looked back and saw that the two Padawans had changed their positions on the bed. He smiled and raised his hands so that he could hold them gently. You did succeed, Mirialan said. I can't do it without help, the Earth boy said shyly, but honestly, I really want to take a nap like Scott did after Godzilla vs. Because staying awake is just too painful, Ahsoka said with a grin, quickly poking Peter's shoulder, and the teen groaned in pain and fell to the ground. Peter, what's wrong with you? Don't be so exaggerated. I don't think he's acting this time, Ahsoka, Barriss said after staring at the twitching Spider-Man for a moment. Ahsoka cringed at the sight. I'm sorry, Peter. Was his response. At this time, the lights in the medical cabin had dimmed, and the resting injured finally fell asleep. Peter chose to remain still, dozing off in a suspended net hammock formed between his two friends. Most of the time it was relatively quiet, except for the Mirialan GD. The young GD found herself in a strange state, where she couldn't sleep. Prior to this, she had talked with Ahsoka and Peter, met with her Master and Commander Gree, and even talked with some other Avengers and GD Masters. The virus had really worn her out, and she was more than willing to take a nap to work off her tiredness. She was the only one who couldn't sleep, no matter how hard she tried. She had considered using the Force and meditating into sleep, but her thought process and her current predicament overrode that. One might ask, what is this dilemma? Barriss turned over in bed, facing Peter who was sleeping. She stared at him with eyes wide open, unable to close them. Peter had fallen asleep. Her eyes were not tired, but reflected the train of thoughts and emotions running through her mind. The more she thought about it, the darker it felt inside her as she continued to stare at the superpowered boy who had saved her life. While she was aware of the efforts of Master Kenobi and Skywalker, as well as Captain Rogers, in finding a cure for the blue shadow virus, the three knew very well who truly saved Naboo. Subconsciously, without realizing it, her hand reached out, and her fingertips brushed Peter's face. He frowned slightly, but he was still sleeping soundly. What she didn't expect was that he reached out and grabbed her hand. Barriss didn't pull away, but continued to stare at him, her eyes fixed on the hand he was holding hers. At first, Padawan was oblivious to her faster heartbeat and flushed cheeks, instead concentrating on gently squeezing Peter's hand in return. A smile appeared on her face and she looked at Peter with affectionate eyes. She blinked in Ahsoka's direction, a sense of relief beginning to wash over her, knowing that her two dear friends were still alive. As soon as the feeling came, however, Barriss realized what he was doing. She glanced down at her hand still in Peter's and quickly pulled her hand away, before turning and walking away from her friend. Huddled up slightly, a rather conflicted expression appeared on the Mirialan's face as she sat hunched over with her chin resting on her knees. She closed her eyes and tried to make herself fall asleep, but it didn't work. So her mind was in it as she lay in the med bay, the only one awake, without emotions. The jungle was dense, to say the least, and the trees were so tall that they almost blocked out the sunlight. Lying on the forest floor was a man dressed from head to toe in a black suit, who was just beginning to wake up. He groaned loudly, covered his head, and slowly sat up from the ground. The man mumbled curses in his native language, and it took the man a moment to realize where he was. The place was oddly familiar, but upon closer inspection, he realized that this place was not home. Not home as he knew it. He carefully got up from the ground and squatted down. Taking a moment to gauge where exactly he was, he didn't really recognize anything. Of course, that was to be expected, since that was his initial sober conclusion. Now that he was on his feet, the trees were so dense that it was difficult for him to see anything. Going through them seemed like a chore and he really had no idea what was waiting for him. So, he sticks to doing what makes him most comfortable. If it was really anyone else, it would be a pretty intimidating environment. Tall trees, unknown flora, no idea what might live here, and if it could be dangerous, intimidating to most people. Yes, but not for this guy. He leaped forward, his gloved fingers extending into metal retractable claws, and gripped the nearest tree, scaling the tall bark with expert skill. The man lunged forward several times like a predatory feline to cover more ground and began to use branches sticking out from all directions to speed up the process until he reached the top, and the helmet on the man's suit retracts to reveal the confusion expression of Chala, Prince of Wakanda, as he stares out at the seemingly endless jungle world before him. Black Panther was completely at a loss as to what he could do now. Where is he? He called immediately into his communicator. Shuri, he said loudly. Shuri, are you there? Can you hear me? There is no reply. Spider-Man? Is anyone there? He tried again, but again, nothing happened. Cursing to himself in Wakandan, Chala kept staring at the lush jungle he was currently in. Now that he thought about it, this place didn't seem like anything he could find near Wakanda, or on the African continent. He knew about the Amazon rainforest, but these trees are taller than any tree you'll find on Earth. At least, that's what the Prince of Wakanda thinks. He's not as smart as his sister, but he's no fool. Either this is an unexplored area of the Earth, or, if he really wants to throw out a crazy idea, it could be somewhere else entirely. Maybe another planet. This was not the astral ancestral plane of the Black Panther. He was sure of that. The helmet was put back around his head, and he began to jump from branch to branch. What is this place? Finally, after what felt like hours, he saw something ahead of him, and high up in the trees it looked like a platform of some kind, and from it emanated the flickering light of what was undoubtedly fire. He quickly picked up his pace, and began to run straight towards the platform, and finally, he jumped up, and landed on the wooden floor of his destination. What he encountered was something rather tall, and furry. It paused what it was doing, perhaps, judging by its appearance, it was cooking, and jerked its head towards the new panther. Chala wasn't quite sure what this large creature was supposed to be, but it seemed defensive. It didn't attack him. Slowly, he raised his hands in a soothing motion, and his helmet retracted. His suit seemed to frighten the creature momentarily, but it still watched him warily. Hello. The Prince of Wakanda said calmly. I hope you don't mind me asking you this, but can you tell me where I am? I'm confused because I came here so suddenly. It quickly let out a series of grunts and growls. He couldn't understand anything. I don't mean to be rude, but your words take some time to sink in. Chapter 272. It only takes one daredevil to anger Bo-Katan. You okay, Matt? Matt Murdock shifted slightly, tilting his head in the direction of the questioning voice. It's okay, Plow, Matt said kindly. It's just a little bothering me. What is causing this disruption? Asked GD Master Plo Koon. The two were currently walking down the halls of the Jedi temple, which would take them to the lower levels of the building. Still not used to being here, Matt admitted as the two began to walk down the stairs. All the noise, the commotion, the sounds. I get it. Take the time to focus on filtering out everything else. I know, Master Plo, Matt said. You taught me before. It's much harder when the whole planet is a city. You hear everything. The Jedi found himself curious. What did you hear? Voices, vehicular screaming and whispering. What? I guess I'm the only one who knows, Matt said vaguely, and the two arrived at their destination point. The Jedi felt a strange chill at the mysterious way Attorney Matt had spoken his last words. Before walking into the room they had come to, there was a single woman in the room, with red hair, green eyes, and an extremely bored expression, which turned into annoyance the moment she saw Murdoch. Oh great, it's you again. Nice to meet you too, Bo-Katan, the woman said angrily. Is it necessary to address each other so formally? I thought we were old acquaintances. That's your name. I just call you that. Well, let's not talk about that, Mad Murdoch, Bo-Katan shot back. We've had this conversation a dozen times by now. If you insist, Matt said, sitting in front of her, while plastered outside. Now, Miss Chris, where were we last? Why don't I speak? Okay, thanks for the heads up, Matt said. Shall we start there? She had an amused look on her face. Do you want to repeat the same mistake? That would be insanity by definition, Matt responded. I guess you could say I was testing which of us would fall into that kind of insanity. How is this insanity? What do you mean? Matt loosened his tie slightly. Well, if you were wondering, back on my home planet, there's a brilliant scientist who coined the term insanity, which is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So, which of us is the crazy one here, Murdoch? That's what I want to know. Okay, then. Bo-Katan sighed. The two began a conversation, with Matt carefully coaxing the woman into responding. The first few times they were blunt, concise and to the point. Although that was to be expected. Finally, you see, Matt, everyone thinks they're ultimately right. Those in power go around thinking their self-righteous cause is best for everyone. Bo-Katan said condescendingly. Your republic is a prime example of this. I'm not part of the republic, Matt said flatly. Since there's no point in denying me joining them, the Avengers are a neutral organization that often helps the Republic because we've seen the heinous destruction carried out by the CIs. Do you believe that the Republic is a pure and just government? Death Watcher sneered back. It is clear to me that all governments are corrupt in some way, shape, or form, Daredevil said. My colleagues are very unhappy with the use of clones and the overall behavior of the Republic before and during this war. Bo-Katan leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. You've been doing your homework, I'll admit it. I'm a lawyer, Matt answered bluntly. I have to do that by default. Otherwise, most of my cases would be based on wild assumptions and accusations. Bo snorted, looking away from the man holding the datapad that was custom made for him to accommodate his blindness. He slid his hand across the shifting surface of the datapad, facing the imprisoned Death Watch member. I would not be so quick to judge and criticize the Republic, Ms. Kreese, Matt continued. As you said, I have done my homework. Oh, she said condescendingly. What have you learned from us Mandalorians? The Mandalorian Wars is an illuminating read, to say the least, Matt said, immediately noticing the way the female warrior in front of him tensed up. The atrocities and literal genocide committed by your people have been etched into history to ensure that no one forgets. That was over 4,000 years ago, Bo-Katan shot back. But those who keep the record books updated still remember it. It was a different time, Bo continued. A time when we were ruled by warrior kings and queens. The Death Watch seems to be back to something, Matt said grimly. More atrocities, more genocide, more war. Tell me, is this really what every living being in this galaxy wants? Most of the galaxy despises the current war to some degree. How do you think they'd feel about the start of another war, this time instigated by a faction that most of the galaxy is all too familiar with? It's not that simple, you know. Bo-Katan hissed. I never said it was easy, the lawyer said calmly. I just pointed out a few things. Matt's Heightened perception on the woman in front of him revealed that she was in discomfort. Will you please stop looking at me like that? Bo-Katan snapped. Matt blinked and tilted his head to look at her. Excuse me, you heard me, she retorted. Stop staring at me like that. It took the blind lawyer a moment to recover. Ms. Kretz, I'm sure you know, if you're pulling the blind card trick on me, then you're a bigger fool than I thought. Bo-Katan quickly interrupted. I know you can see. Just not in the usual way. His mouth snapped shut for a second, and this time he was really staring at the woman in front of him. There was a moment of tense silence between the two of them, and Bo-Katan turned her body so that she was no longer facing the lawyer. Does this bother you? He asked, breaking the silence. She chose not to respond, remaining defiantly silent. Matt sighed to himself, ready to continue his previous conversation he had intended to have with her about the Republic, the CIs, and her position in it all. So, you joined the Death Watch, Matt began. A Mandalorian sect that wishes to return their people to their ancient warrior roots. Yes? Again, she didn't answer. A group of Mandalorians who have made it clear that they are trying to remove your sister from power, Matt said in a more concise tone. It seems to be more than just assassination. I didn't ask for that, Bo-Katan snapped. Well, considering how many assassinations attempts have been made on Duchess Satine in a short period of time, you're not opposed to it, Matt pointed out. I would have thought you would at least join other factions of the Mandalorians, not the ones that want their sister dead. I would never do that. Why not? Matt asked. What stops you from going to these people? What do they call themselves? The real Mandalorians? What stops you from going to them? Bo-Katan was silent again, and then the blind man noticed that her body was getting hotter and hotter. Have you ever considered wanting to join, or does this supervisor forbid you from doing so? I don't know about them. Alright, Bo-Katan admitted. I see. So far, he hadn't discovered her lies, but if there is a chance, a Mandalorian does not break his word, Bo stressed. Matt gave her the most bland look he could muster. So you stick with a group with such a cute title, hoping to bring death to your own family. Bo-Katan gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. This man was really starting to annoy her. You're doing the right thing for your people, serving your country, but is this actually the reality of the situation? Shut up, Bo muttered. Matt was undeterred. I may be blind, but I can see you're being led astray. Shut up, she said again, louder this time. To throw your life out there where it could be completely wasted. No honor, no glory, no respect. Shut up, Bo-Katan yelled, slamming his fist on the table. Matt just sat there, showing no concern or any reaction to her outburst. Bo-Katan gave the man a venomous look. You think you're so smart? Bo-Katan scoffed. Acting like you know all the answers. I can say that I'm very stupid in many areas. Several of my friends can attest to that. Seeing that he was only trying to further irritate her, Matt cleared his throat and leaned back in his chair in a more relaxed position. Maybe we're taking the wrong path here. He didn't need to use his heightened senses to take in the bored look she gave him. Maybe we can help each other. How? In the name of Mandalore could we possibly do this? Why? Don't you tell me about yourself, Matt said, resting his elbows on the table. About your life on Mandalore, or about being a Mandalorian. Please tell me your perspective, and I might be able to understand things more clearly. The redhead in front of him just gave a confused look. What the hell is going on? Sorry, all these questions. Bo-Katan elaborated. You've been coming here for the past few weeks, and we've had these discussions, and now you want to make it personal? Have me tell you my life story? What's your game here? You think I have ultimate motives? She scoffed loudly and answered clearly. Well, I think you should at least conclude that the Republic considers you a prisoner with vital information about the Death Watch. Bo crossed his arms when he heard this. If it weren't for the relationship between Obi-Wan Kenobi and your sister Satine, your interrogation would have been much more severe, allowing you to remain in the Jedi Temple instead of the largest cell here on Coruscant. Matt said. Although you are a Death Watcher, you have made no advances against the Duchess, nor have you made any threats to her life. Her figure relaxed slightly. Of course, this information will become outdated sooner or later, as your companions will change things accordingly. After all, no one will be surprised to know about their compromises. Oh my god, what's the point of allowing me to talk? This whole getting to know each other bullshit, Bo-Katan said aloud in confusion. You didn't say anything. You didn't give me a chance. Okay, go ahead. Matt mimicked her pose, crossing his arms and leaning back in his chair again. Tell me something about yourself that has nothing to do with Death Watch or anything like that. She opened her mouth to speak, then quickly closed it. Silence filled the room, and Daredevil noticed that she was now a little flustered. Okay, shut up and I'll say what I'm going to say. Got it? Of course. Bo-Katan shook his head momentarily, trying to control the urge to strangle the man in front of him. What could possibly I told you I'd say what I'd say, Bo interrupted. Give me a minute. Damn it. Outside the interrogation room, Plocken couldn't help but chuckle. Hopefully, things will get better for them now, even if it's just one small step at a time. Chapter 273 LOVERS and -039, Troubles. While the Fearless speaks with the detained Mandalorians, the rest of the Avengers, save for two, do their own thing on Coruscant for the time being. Sam was in the private quarters of the Jedi Temple with Scott and Hope, the three of them passing the time by talking to each other as they adjusted their suits. At this point, Stephen Rhodes left Coruscant along with Obi-Wan and Aayla Secura, and the group was temporarily sent to Mandalore. The three knew that Matt was talking to Bo, Natasha was with Mera, and Peter was in the library again. On the other hand, Petro, Senate building, a door opened, revealing one Senator, Rio Chachi, who let out a tired sigh as she walked into her private office inside the Senate building. It was another day of aimless debate in the Senate chamber, the entire session being about the war. Honestly, she was growing tired of this talk of war, but she knew she had no choice in the matter. She was the representative of her people. She was chosen for this job and she will do her job conscientiously. But if Chucky wanted something, or rather someone to help relieve that pressure, she would be happy to goof off. On time, a second later, Rio found himself being led out the door by an invisible figure moving too fast to be identified. However, instead of panicking like most people would have, Chucky laughed loudly and threw his arms around Petro Maximov's neck. Finally, Mrs. Socko exclaimed, I thought you would never let go. Oh, shut up, Rio said coyly, pulling him to her and kissing her passionately. I missed you. I know, Quicksilver said somewhat arrogantly. Chucky gave him a seductive smile. What am I to you then? Absolutely irresistible companion, Quicksilver said, their foreheads resting together. Chucky couldn't help but blush at the look Maximov gave her. She felt the heat building on her face which made her look away. So, what does the lady wish her humble servant to do to take her away from this dreary place? Quicksilver asked, taking her in his arms and making her giggle. Well, I'd appreciate it if you could take me somewhere where I don't have to deal with all the useless politics here. Quicksilver frowned in thought. I'm not sure yet, but I think it can be arranged, Quicksilver said, his eyebrows raised slightly, which made Chucky blush at the subtle hint. She patted his shoulder gently, and Quicksilver just smiled in response, and pecked her lips again. What could it be, ma'am? Said Quicksilver, and he again embraced the senator. Rio gave him her most coy and seductive look, tracing her fingers along his jawline. Maybe back to my place. Quicksilver gave her a rude smile. Deal. For a moment, her office was a blur, and at the same time, a brief giggle could be heard on the wind. Chachi could hardly imagine anyone else in her position. A senator like her being associated with someone like Petro. People would think it was shameful, because it was with someone from a different background. Back in the Senate building, Padme sneezed loudly. Must be a cold, Senator Nab said, grabbing a tissue and blowing his nose. Lady Padme, can I get you something to relieve yourself? TDNT, 3PO, Padme said with an appreciative smile. As the protocol droid retrieved the drink she had requested, Padme glanced back at her workstation as she continued her daily grind. Aside from the current war against the Separatists, the situation on Mandalore was now over. This often kept her awake most nights. The senator sighed tiredly, leaning back in his chair and rubbing his temple. She really hoped that this bloody war would end soon, but it would be stupid if it ended so soon. Padme turned her chair around to face the window of her office and gazed out at the cityscape of Coruscant. Her eyes drifted along the many buildings and lanes of the planet until they came to rest on a square building with 5 tall columns. Jedi Temple. Subconsciously, she placed her hand on her chest, resting on a special necklace her husband had made for her. She sometimes hated all these secrets and the Jedi code about forming attachments. She wanted to be able to be free with the man she loved most in this galaxy without all the complications. As she continued to stare at the temple, her thoughts drifted to the other unique group of people that occupied the headquarters of the Jedi Order. The Avengers had certainly made quite an impact in their short time in the galaxy, and Padme had a hunch that their influence here was only just beginning. After a while, the door to her office opened, and she turned to see that 3P0 had not only returned with her tea, but also her good friends Mon Mothma and Bail Organa. Organa? Mothma? Padme said, confused. How are you two? We are fine, old friend, Belle said with a gracious smile. But as you know, politics has a tendency to drain people's energy, Mothma said knowingly, and all 3 senators laughed. It only takes 1 day, maybe 2, for nothing to happen. Padme said, that, in itself is a complete miracle, Organa responded jokingly. I see more grey hair every morning. Padme and Mothma laughed at the Alderaan senator's self-deprecating humor. Chapter 274 about clones. As much as I enjoy seeing my friends, I must ask, what is the purpose of coming here? Padme asked curiously. I thought you two would like to retire, or have some time to rest after today's meeting. Mothma and Organa looked at each other, then turned to look at Padme, a slightly grim look on their faces. To be frank, Padme, there is something that has been troubling me for some time, Organa said, frowning. Mothma and I share a common concern. Padme looked back and forth between them, confused. What? We met and spoke with Natasha Romanoff from the Avengers a while ago, if you remember. Senator Naboo nodded. Do you remember her asking us about the beginning of the war? Padme's lips curved downward as she thought for a moment. A hint of recognition crossed Senator Naboo's face. Oh, yes, I almost forgot. Thank you for reminding me, Padme said, taking the tea she had requested from the protocol droid. Is there any reason you bring that up now? Mothma looked over to Organa, who had his arms crossed. You remember her asking where the clone army came from, didn't you? Organa asked and Padme nodded. Well, it's been on my mind for weeks now, ever since my encounter with her. Frankly, it's been a completely neglected topic for far longer than it should have been. The outbreak and rapid escalation of this war has left us without the energy to think carefully, and we have been doing everything to prevent basic civil liberties from being taken away by the Supreme Chancellor, Mothma added. Padme was well aware of the subject, and she found herself internally confused at the way the Chancellor was behaving. He was always kind, patient, and willing to listen to any and all sides. However, some of the actions he has taken in recent months are beginning to worry Senator Nab. It felt as if there were 1,000 missing pieces in this war, and as the war wore on, more and more of them kept piling up, leaving Padme with a very vague understanding of what they were even fighting for at this point. Getting a search warrant for a clone facility will take time, especially with the war still raging, Organa said. There is no doubt that doing so would also draw unwanted attention, which could lead to a more unsavory situation, Mothma added. Let's not even begin to discuss the moral dilemma we face, Organa said, his tone dark. When people take a moment to think about our military, these clones were bred directly to wage war for the Republic, a slave army created out of thin air. Last I knew, thousands of years ago, the Republic made slavery illegal, Padme said, a looming sense of despair settling over her. A sense of dread settled over the 3 as they realized what the Republic had gotten themselves into in this war, and their army itself. The more they thought and discussed it, the less it made sense. We need to uncover the truth behind our military, Organa said after a few minutes of discussion. But where do we start? Padme asked. You said it yourself. If we go directly to Chennai with a search warrant, someone will immediately target us. We need to start somewhere, Mothma stressed. her eyes drifting to the window, where she saw the GD temple in the distance. Perhaps the GD Knights will be needed to assist in the investigation. If memory serves, they have their own people stationed in Sheno, overseeing training and development. Yes. Organa rubbed his chin, lost in thought. Shark Tea, I believe that's the name. Then we should contact her, Padme said. So what are we going to do? Let this GD system investigate, if possible, and uncover any irregularities, Mothma pointed out, though Organa shook his head. That's easier said than done, Bell said. It will also lead to further suspicion. We don't have much choice, Meng said, frowning. Then we seek help from third parties, Padme said, a gleam in her eyes. Organizations that are only superficially affiliated with the Republic, but are actually independent. It took her two friends a long time to comprehend what she had just said. Do you think the Avengers can complete this investigation? Mothma questioned. Natasha drew our attention, intentionally or not, Padme pointed out. She was the one asking us about her knowledge of the clones, this war, and all the things that should have been asked from the beginning. It showed me that the Avengers had their own doubts from the beginning. Do you think they'd be willing to accept something like this? Organa asked, looking conflicted. I'd rather not drag them further into this war. They've done a lot for the Republic, and their goal is to return home, not get involved in a war that spans the galaxy. I know, and I don't want them to do this either, Padme said seriously. But on the surface, they are the best people for this mission. If we do ask them the question, it's going to have to be covert, and in a location where it won't be completely conspicuous, Mothma said firmly. Well, then my own villa would be perfect for that, Padme said with a small smile. At this point, I can consider my Avengers friends. If I call Captain Rogers and Natasha, at least that could be a start. Organa nodded approvingly, a sentiment echoed by Mothma. Of course. Do what you can. Padme. Senator Amidala simply tilted her head towards them both, taking a sip of her tea as her two friends left her office. She turned to the window again and gazed upon the GD temple, her hopes now resting on the unveiling of this new mission she and her senators had now given themselves. Padme knew well that this was a difficult task, especially in this war, but it is a job that urgently needs to be done. Her thoughts drifted to her friends Natasha and Hope, wondering what they were both doing right now. The latter is with her boyfriend and friends at the moment. Chapter 275 Chaos in Mandalore. Former Natasha Romanoff, also known as Black Widow, is currently standing in a communications room with Anakin Skywalker, Kit Fisto, Mace Windu, and Master Yoda. Communicating with them via holographic transmission were Obi-Wan, Ayla Secura, Steve Rogers, War Machine Rhodes, and Commanders Cody and Bly. What's the situation on Mandalore? Mace asked immediately. Steve scoffed and shook his head. Well, ever since the Republic came here without the consent of the people of this planet, there's been civil unrest, anger, and a lot of negativity going on. Captain Rogers, you know this is beyond our control, Kit Fisto said diplomatically. The Senate decided this. They are still a neutral planet, Obi-Wan admitted with a frown. I fear that such drastic action will only lead those who remain neutral to align themselves more with the Separatists, Ayla said, expressing her own opinion. You and we all agree, said the Star-Spangled Avenger. What trouble? Yoda asked. There's little else besides what we told you, Obi-Wan admitted. Although there has been the mass exodus from the planet you describe. Escape? Mace asked doubtfully. There are a lot of ships coming in and out of this planet, taking people away from here, Cody said. Who organized it? Asked Natasha. Those who claim to be true Mandalorians, Commander Bly revealed. What? Mace said in a sharp tone. They're just coming in and out of this planet, and no one's stopping them? Respected Lord Windu, Ayla said. Things are tense, just like this planet. The Death Watch is the Mandalorian faction currently considered a threat by the Republic. These protectors, as they are called, haven't really done anything that would provoke a greater conflict. The Duchess of Sardinia has her hands full already, and she can't do anything about the protectors as long as they really have the support of the commoners. And incidentally, the number of those leaving has been growing lately. So when one faction is under surveillance, the other takes the opportunity to grow its power, Mace said, frowning. The enemy, they have not yet been revealed, Yoda said. We may be a professional force. We do not do it to manage the lives and choices of others. The last thing we need is a more organized faction of Mandalorians as an enemy, Fisto said loudly, grimly. Nevertheless, the Duchess was growing increasingly concerned. Kenobi spoke up. How is she? Anakin asked, his eyes fixed on his former master. She's fine, Obi-Wan said after a moment. We don't have much to add, Ella said. Everything else that needs to be addressed, we've sent over as a data file for review. That is all, Yoda said, tapping his staff gently on the ground. May the Force be with you. After the meeting, the people in the room left and headed for their desired destinations. Along the way, Natasha walked down the corridor with Skywalker not far behind her. She saw him out of the corner of her eye and asked him what he thought about it. What's going on? Natasha asked Anakin, who sighed uncertainly. Honestly, I'm more worried about Obi-Wan. Black Widow exclaimed. Can't disagree with you. He's a GD master and Satine is the leader of her people. Anakin hunt. Girlfriend complications, like. He'd like to deny it, Natasha said with a wry smile, and Skywalker smiled as well. That took came to a door, which opened to reveal a small room with a plain bed and shelves. Who is in the room? Hey, Mera, Natasha said with a warm smile, walking over to the young red-haired baby who squealed loudly with joy at the sight of the Avengers. Hands were held out to her, and the baby's request was granted as she was lifted into the air and into Natasha's arms. The former KGB spy poked Mera's nose, eliciting laughter from the babe, and Natasha smiled widely. Anakin's face broke into a smile when he heard a soft cooing sound from below him. He soon felt two small three-fingered hands on his ankles, and he looked down. Oh, hey, Grogu. Didn't see you there, Anakin said, crouching down and walking over to the small green baby that the GD was holding. Having fun here with Mera? Baby Grogu only made gurgling noises that seemed to indicate yes, though Anakin couldn't understand a word the baby said. It took a while, but they finally figured out Baby Yoda's name. Honestly, they should have gone with a more experienced GD to help fully communicate with little Grogu. Peter and Scott, as well as Hope and Sam, were surprisingly visibly disappointed that they couldn't stick with the name they'd chosen for him. Dylan. And it's not just Dylan, but the way Arnold Schwarzenegger said it in Predator. In that specific accent. Thank you, Clint, Natasha muttered to herself, walking over to her bed and sitting down, placing Mera on her lap. Hawkeye, right? Anakin said, gently placing Grogu next to Natasha. He has a wife and children. Yeah, 3 little monsters running around, Natasha said, tickling Mera gently, who giggled as she clutched Romanov's hand tightly. Anakin stared at the two babies with mixed emotions. On the one hand, he enjoyed being with these little kids. These children are the future of the Jedi Order and will one day become the protectors of the galaxy. On the other hand, Padme. Anakin whispered to himself. He didn't know if his wife would want children, but until recently, he hadn't thought about it. Honestly, the thought of becoming a father one day is both terrifying and delightful. He wanted to experience what his mother had when she raised him in the slavery. These things are everywhere. If he wasn't a GD, had kids, everything would be fine. Honestly, this damn GD code is more of a curse than a guide. No feelings. How can this be? Every living thing in the universe has feelings. When he was taught about the Force, he was instructed to feel it. Why shouldn't he or any GD in the galaxy be allowed to express emotion? He just saw his master's melancholy expression because of Satine. Anakin blinked as he felt something press down on his foot again and saw that Grogu had somehow gotten off the bed with relative ease and was now approaching him again. How did this little guy do it? Anakin asked the baby, who simply tilted his head in response. It seems to me that he is asking you that question, Natasha said loudly, holding Jade in her lap. What are you thinking about, Anakin? It's mostly relationships, he said, hiding most of what he really wanted to say. Oh, what would that be like? Natasha continued to ask. It's a bit of a complicated topic, Anakin. It's about relationships, Romanov said firmly. Unfortunately, relationships are rarely simple, and any that are simple are godsend. And then, raising the child, I guess, Anakin admitted after a moment. Don't know what that would be like. Next time you see Plo Koon, you can ask him about it. He's the one who found Ahsoka, right? Raised his own Padawan for a while. He can give you some insight into what he had to do at the time. Maybe, Anakin muttered. Natasha rolled her eyes. Come on Anakin, I know there's more to do. Talk to me. Steve advises against that when it comes to relationships. Anakin quipped. This involves an intimate relationship that involves dating. Natasha deadpanned. This is completely different. Yeah. Anakin chuckled to himself. Natasha stared at the GD Knight with a searching look. What he didn't realize was that he was a little too obvious at times. She didn't know of another GD, but Natasha was confident that Anakin had something going on with a senator from Naboo. Point if you like. You can talk about a woman who looks a lot like Jane Foster as she watched the two approach. As they communicated with each other, the expressions were sometimes subtle, but to the trained eye of a spy, they could catch the looks they gave each other, the understated movements and gestures. In Natasha Romanoff's eyes, it was obvious that the two were very much in love. After all, she knew what it was like. One day, whatever was going on between them would come to light. Until then, she wouldn't really say anything, because it wasn't something she had the right to say. All she could do was sit back and watch for now. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.